Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Allen, the Ward 6 council member and chair of the council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment. Today is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. We are meeting in room 500 of the John A. Wilson building and over the Zoom virtual platform. The time is now 9:35 a.m. and I'm calling to order this performance oversight hearing of the committee. Today's performance oversight hearing will be focused on the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. WMATA was created by an interstate compact in 1967 and has operated regionally since then with rail and bus service across Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. WMATA's Metro Rail system covers 98 stations, has 128 miles of track. Its Metro bus service serves the nation's capital 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with approximately 1,500 buses. Together, Metro's rail and bus systems serve a population of approximately 4 million people with 1,500 square mile jurisdiction. Metro also runs Metro Access, a shared ride door-to-door paratransit service for people with disabilities. Metro is what most people use to travel to and from work, school, entertainment, and recreation. A robust public transit system is also a key component of the district's sustainability goals. The most recent iteration of those goals, Sustainability 2.0, has set a goal of reducing the share of commute trips by automobile to 25% while increasing the share of active transportation, which includes walking and biking, to 25% and transit to 50% by 2032. The economic health of the district and the larger Washington metropolitan region is inextricably linked to its regional transportation system, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation. With that, a couple of comments on the format for today's hearing. Public witnesses testifying on their own behalf will have 3 minutes to testify, and ANC commissioners or those testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5. If there are multiple witnesses testifying on behalf of the same organization, only one witness will have the full 5 minutes to testify. The other witnesses will each have 3. We'll be using a timer, so please keep an eye on that so we stay on schedule. For witnesses testifying in person, please take a seat at the table when your name is called. For witnesses testifying virtually, you'll receive a prompt via Zoom to be promoted to panelist. Please accept that prompt when you see it. After finishing your testimony, please remain seated or stay in the Zoom so that we can ask you questions. And if you have any questions, please use the chat function to ask committee staff for help. For anyone who's interested in submitting written testimony for the record, you can do so through the council's hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings, and the record closes on February 16th, 2026. We're joined with Mr. Randy Clark, who has limited availability today and is traveling, I believe, to Richmond to go speak in Virginia. So we're going to be starting with our government witnesses today to ensure we have enough time for his testimony and for Q&A, and then we'll be turning to public witnesses after that. So a little bit of a switch from our normal order. But Mr. Clark, I'm going to turn to you, and if you will introduce any of your team members you want to speak to, and then we'll have your testimony, and then we'll turn to questions after that. And good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm joined by Leroy Jones. Leroy is our Chief Operating Officer in all things snow and ice in the last week as well. So, but I'm really happy to have Leroy with me. So, but again, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the council and the committee. My name is Randy Clark. I'm the General Manager of Metro, as you mentioned. And I really appreciate the opportunity to highlight the work of our talented team and the services we provide this region, including the district. Every day, as you mentioned, 24/7, 365. Over the past 3 years, Metro has achieved a level of performance and recognition that reflects both the dedication of our workforce and the strength of our regional partnerships. The American Public Transportation Association, also known as APTA, recently honored Metro with several of its highest awards, including the Rail Security Gold Award, Outstanding Partnership in Public Transportation Award, and that was for our Better Bus Network redesign, and very proud of the 2025 Transit Agency of the Year, so top agency in North America. These national recognitions underscore that the improvements customers are experiencing every day are meaningful, measurable, and gaining national attention. Customers are returning to the system because we are delivering more frequent, reliable service and prioritizing continuous improvement. Ridership grew by 6% overall in 2025, continuing a steady upward trend. This growth is a direct result of our focus on delivering the safer, more reliable, and more customer-centric Metro. Safety is our core value at Metro, and it reflects our commitment and pride as America's Metro system. Crime across the system is now at an all-time low, down 60% since FY23. This didn't happen by chance. It's a result of sustained investment, targeted strategies, and close coordination with our regional partners, and in this case, in the district, that would be MPD. Fare enforcement is up and fare evasion is down on both bus and rail. Customers see a difference and they are telling us they feel safer, and the data confirms it. I'm also happy to report our employees feel the same. They feel safer while at work on the system. We are also modernizing the customer experience in ways that make Metro easier to use and more responsive to customer needs. Our Tap Right Go initiative has simplified fare payment and expanded access. Our bus network redesign, as I previously mentioned, is delivering 7% more bus service with the same amount of operating dollars and is relocating service to where customers need it the most. We did the entire network redesign through basically an equity and safety lens to get to those results. And as the restoration of automatic train operation, or locally known as ATO, and automatic door operation, known as ADO, has improved reliability, consistency, and efficiency across the rail system. Metro continues to be a powerful economic engine for this region. This year, we advanced 5 new real estate development projects, including in the district, the Deanwood project, which will bring a full-service DC public library to the community. Across our development portfolio, we are supporting over 1,300 new residential units. In the district alone, Metro adjacent development contribute to an estimated $213 billion in property value and $2 billion in annual property tax revenue, demonstrating the scale of Metro's impact to the region's economic vitality. And I think, Mr. Chairman, representing NOMA and Navy Yard, I think would be great examples to highlight that. We are equally committed to supporting small and local businesses. Over the past year, Metro awarded $54 million in prime contracts to DC-based businesses and $24 million to small businesses across the region. These investments strengthen local economies and ensure the benefits of Metro progress are shared broadly. Finally, we continue to deepen our regional collaboration. The 18-month DMV Move initiative, co-chaired by you, Chair Allen, and former board chair Paul Smedberg, has brought together leaders from across the region to develop a long-term unified vision for transit. Both the WMATA board and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, also known as COG, have endorsed this work, underscoring the shared commitment to a sustainable, integrated, and future-ready transit network. I believe at this point, almost every regional government entity has also passed resolutions supporting this effort, the first time that has ever happened. As we look ahead, Metro is committed to sustaining this momentum. This progress we have made is encouraging, but we know our work is not finished. Continued partnership with the district and our regional leaders will be essential to maintaining a safe, reliable, and financially stable transit system that meets the need of our growing region, including meeting the goals and sustainability goals that you mentioned in your remarks. Thank you, Chairman Allen and members of the council, for your continued leadership support at Metro. Appreciate the opportunity to share this update with you. Happy to answer any questions, again, with my colleague, Leroy Jones. And again, finally, I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, I guess personal point of privilege, just want to thank you for your leadership on DMV Moves. Many meetings, many conversations, but it was very, very good work. And I think there's, a lot of people will go to the district, Richmond, Annapolis, and looking to support for their, their cause or the reason for investments. I would dare say I don't think any organization or effort or topic area has gone through the scrutiny, transparency that we have done in the last 18 months collectively as a region. And I think that's why we're poised to finally solve the long-term dedicated funding topic at Metro once and for all. So just wanted to say thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'm really proud of the collaboration across the whole region to lay that vision. I'm going to jump in with questions. First off, thank you for your testimony and for the responses to questions the committee sent in advance. I'm probably going to jump in first talking about snow and ice, since that's front of mind for a lot of folks, and then kind of get into some other questions after that. And for folks that are watching or listening, we did have a number of our public witnesses switch to virtual because transportation in any system, the best systems are still going to have challenges with this much snow and ice. And I know I've got at least one of my colleagues that's joining us by Zoom as well. So there are people virtual, but not necessarily in person here today. But let's focus on kind of what we've been experiencing this last week. Certainly, a lot of residents still struggling with the impact, and any major storm system is going to present challenges to any regional bus and rail system. I think that I share a lot of folks the frustration for getting our bus system back up and running, that the DDOT snow plows would create just kind of mountains of ice and snow in front of our bus stops, which presented serious challenges. I do think there's some confusion about which parts of this are a district responsibility and then which parts are a WMATA responsibility. So I might just start so we can have a level set so people know, even though we're all trying to work in partnership and coordination, which responsibility areas there are. Because I think there may be some places where obviously we still have a lot of work to do, but there are some clear responsibilities. So in the district, property owners, for example, are responsible for clearing snow and ice from the sidewalks around their property. DGS, our Department of General Services, would manage the removal at all the district-owned properties, think your schools, your rec centers, things like that. DPW and DDOT partner to plow the actual roadways. One of the things that I wanted to ask about is when we look at our station entrances and exits, so just focusing on our Metro Rail stations, entrance and exits, that is WMATA's responsibility?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. So we have a very large footprint in Metro, and I think depending on which district, or sorry, which jurisdiction we're in, I think, like I guess it's like politics, all things are local. So if you're in the district, you forget that we maybe run from Loudoun County to New Carrollton and Prince George's County, from Shady Grove and Montgomery County to Franconia, Springfield, and Fairfax. So a very large footprint with several dozen facilities that something like the DC Department of General Services would look after. So on the station side, if we would call top side of a station, that is our responsibility in the footprint of our property. Now, they're all a little different. So some are more like a park and ride style, where there's a lot of clearing because it's sidewalks connected to parking and bus loops and things of that nature. And of course, we have all these bus loops we look after. And then there's stations that are more into the city and really built into the kind of urban core, maybe like a Columbia Heights or Foggy Bottom, where the abutter is directly next to it, or DuPont, which is the next property. So we look after our property limits. Now, I will say in this storm, we kind of jumped in with all of our partners. We've done hundreds of bus stops. We've actually cleared streets for some of our partners, and we continue to do a lot of sidewalks that connect to Metro facilities. Now, those, again, are not our quote-unquote legal responsibility, and they are costing us resources to do. But from a safety point of view and from just an emergency partnership collaboration point of view, we are doing that every day. So Leroy specifically has been, really in leadership with DPW and DDOT in the district. And I've coordinated with the mayor and her leadership team multiple times as well. So again, all hands on deck trying to work together, but there is a definite separation between someone that owns a property, what Metro's property is, and I guess what would be city's property.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and that kind of leads me into the piece which a lot of people see. Obviously, across our city, we've got thousands of bus stops. And one of the frustrations that I heard from a lot of folks, and challenges that I saw, when a plow puts a 3-foot wall in front of a bus stop, we were watching, and it's important. Our bus system's got to get up and running for the city to get back to work, right? Our students rely on it to get to school. When we're seeing people stand on the roadway because they just can't get over that, nobody wants that. We would all acknowledge that's not safe, and we got to address that. But the bus stops and shelters for neighbors that are thinking about this within the community across the neighborhood, that is not WMATA's, from a responsibility standpoint. That's not your role, is to clear that 3-foot ice bank that just got pushed up against the curb.
That's correct, sir. That would be, again, this is we're in DC, that would be a district responsibility, just like it would be, say, in Fairfax or Montgomery County, Prince George's, and on and on. Now, the ones we do clear are the ones at our stations and busways. So if you went to, I don't know, a Minnesota Avenue or an Anacostia, as an example, if you went down Anacostia, that is a very large footprint, and that is all of our responsibility, of which we took care of.
Yep. And then can we talk a little about what the coordination has looked like? Sounds like, Mr. Jones, you've been running point on a lot of that coordination. Obviously, you're working directly with DDOT, with DPW, I'm assuming also HCMA. Can you walk us through the coordination beginning the day or so before the storm, as the storm is falling, and then kind of some of the reaction afterwards to get a picture of what that's looked like?
Yeah, I'll make a comment and I'll hand it over to Mr. Jones. So I think one thing that we do well is we coordinate all the time with our partners. And so it could be on a bus lane planning to national security events. So there's a lot of coordination that happens, specifically whether it's the mayor's office or leadership at different departments. So we do that a lot on the public safety side, obviously. I think overall, we do a really good job on these types of things. I would say the uniqueness of this event has certainly been challenging. But leading up to this storm, there was definitely conversations about preparedness. I went down and did a press conference with the mayor at HCMA. I apologize, I can't remember the date. Was that, it might have been Saturday. I think it was Saturday it might have been Friday, leading up to the storm. And there was a bunch of coordination that way. And then it has continued. We activated our Emergency Operations Center on last Saturday. And we also embedded for the first time ever, a WMATA team member into the DPW Snow and Ice Center. And then Leroy, lots of our colleagues have been working incredibly hard. We've had thousands of employees working very hard, but Mr. Jones has been kind of lead. So I asked Leroy to jump in with some more context.
Sure. So just to add a little bit more information to that, definitely leading up to the storm, we were in coordination with all our jurisdictional partners, but specifically with DC, focused with HCMA. And honestly, way before we even got to our first snowstorm, myself and Sharon Kirschbaum was in conversations about putting someone in DPW Snow Command, as Mr. Clark just mentioned. So we had started our planning long before we had our first snow event back in December. For this particular storm, WMATA was in close coordination with HCMA, the Health Consortium as well, making sure that we had close contact with the hospitals throughout the region so that they had a good understanding of our service capabilities day by day. And then also very close contact, as I mentioned, with DPW, DDOT as well in the district. As Mr. Clark mentioned, we did open up our Emergency Operations Center on Saturday, last Saturday, and we closed that down on last Thursday. From Saturday up until today, we've still been in close coordination with all of our regional partners. Myself, Ms. Kirschbaum, and one of my team members, Ms. Bell, were texting back and forth about our readiness for startup for service this morning, particularly with schools. All 18 of our school routes as of today are clear and on normal route. I believe as of 7 o'clock this morning, the report that we received from the team was that 46 of the 54 bus routes in DC are back on normal route. Obviously, we still, throughout the region, are facing some challenges with snow and ice at bus stops, but collectively, we're working with our regional partners to do the best job we can to clear stops and assist on street clearing as well. So I believe that the relationships that have been developed and sustained prior to the storm has gone a long way in our ability as an agency to execute throughout the storm.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we will be doing a much deeper deep dive and kind of after action report across all the government as we get through it. We're still in it, so we're not on the other side of it yet. I want to talk about bus operations just for a little bit, because obviously this is something that impacts our bus operations significantly. Let me start though with our workforce. So we've got a great workforce that's out there, but just like everybody else, it's going to impact, you've got parents who are your employees, so school closures are going to impact that. Folks, their ability to travel to and from. What does your workforce availability look like through this storm? And what are some of the accommodations you might have made to help assist workers?
So let me just go back before I answer your question. Just want to talk through all of the hard work that our human capital team has put forth in terms of recruitment and building up a pipeline of, at times, as many as 1,000 people in the pipeline in various stages from initial application, and then also assessing the application, going through background, going through medical, and also getting start offer letters, right?
Just because I'm aware of my time.
Oh,
I'm definitely going to come back so we can have a longer conversation around kind of our recruitment and how we work on that driver availability. I'm just gonna, if I can, just focus here on from a snow response, how we worked with our workers, in particular, our bus operators.
Yeah, so specifically the bus operators, obviously that was a challenge. We did have some people that were unable to get to work. We did provide some hotel rooms for some operators as well, similar to our station managers as well as our rail operators. But we tried to provide the best service as we possibly could with the staffing that we had available. Each day we provided clear communication to our customers about the level of bus service that we were able to provide, and we tried to be proactive in that communication. But staffing was a challenge, as it was throughout the region, for sure.
Yeah. And I definitely want to come back. We'll dig in more on driver availability in just a little bit. I think the communications are critical because it helps set expectations, helps people know what to expect. Last Friday, for example, I had to go downtown for an event, and on my way back was going to catch the bus. I had no expectation. The bus is running, on a 5 or 10 minute headway at that point. I looked, it was a 41-minute wait for the bus. I wasn't bent out of shape over that because I knew we were in the middle of a storm. The communications helped me understand and set expectations about what choices to make to be able to get around. When we say, I think you said 46 of our routes are normal route, does that mean no more detours? Is that what we're talking about? Or we're talking about the level of headway schedule is at normal expectation?
In terms of the bus is actually able to operate safely along the normal route.
Got it. Okay, so from a route perspective, we're almost back to 100%.
Yeah.
Now, I think you said 46 out of 52 or
Out of 54.
54. Okay, so it's close. All right. And then from a hitting our headway schedules, how would we rate that? I mean, and again, level set expectations, right? First couple of days of the storm, I do not expect us to be on headway schedules. It's going to be incrementally getting closer and closer. So as we sit here today, where would we be around how we're hitting our headway schedule?
We're making progress day by day and throughout the day. When the storm first started, we were very challenged with providing the normal headway, obviously, in the midst of the storm. And as roads became clear, we tried to provide as much service as it was safe to do so. But even to today, it is still challenged to provide the normal headway just because we're dealing with one-lane streets, which would normally be, depending on the area of the jurisdiction, three-lane streets. We're down to one. We're also dealing with staffing as well. Challenges. But one of the things that we have been doing as well, going back to your original question, which ties to this one, is that we brought in extra operators as well to provide as much service, to provide as close to the normal headway as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then
If I can, Chair Allen, I think one important thing too is we're always going to try to manage the resources related to demand as best we can as well. So, to note, school outside of the district, school in the whole region has been shut down. And then OPM, obviously the federal government was shut down for multiple days. And then even there's a partial government shutdown today due to another matter, not the storm. And I think all of those things blend. We are then trying to manage the resources. So a good example would be we are not going to run express buses that are mostly federal government employees or federal contractors to the downtown core from, say, one of the regional suburbs when OPM was shut down. So we're trying to then add, is that if that person's trained onto a route that is more of a critical route in the district, or say Prince George's County, that kind of thing. So trying to match that as best we can to create the best frequencies, knowing the impediments that Mr. Jones mentioned.
Yep. And again, I think the communications have been key. It helps set expectations and lets people know what they can expect, frankly. I'll say as somebody who is a regular Metro rider, bus and rail, when I jumped on the bus on Friday to get downtown to an event, the bus showed up, it was full, it was packed, but that meant people clearly needed to get that ride, right? And today, being on Metro Rail, it was full, felt full, but it was on time. And so I know that'll keep incrementally getting back to exactly where we want it. On the rail side, as we sit today, all of our both below ground and above ground rail is fully at 100%?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the amount of time we experienced any unavailability of above ground rail?
We ran end to end throughout the entire storm.
Okay. All right. And from the standpoint of workforce as well, again, I'm assuming much like our bus operators, we're going to have challenges with this level of the storm for some of our staff and rail operators as well, correct?
Yes. But similar to to one of your earlier questions, we did put people in hotels to give them the option to stay there so that they could be available to work the next day.
Got it. Okay. And then for Metro Access, how is our Metro Access availability at this point?
Metro Access is fully operational. Throughout the storm, we provided life-sustaining trips. We did have to scale back at some point in the storm for a couple of days, but we still provided life-sustaining trips if customers chose to still take the service.
Okay. So is it accurate to say as of today, our Metro Access is back to 100% availability?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're back.
Yeah, we were back yes, Thursday.
Okay. All right. We've been joined by a couple of my colleagues. Councilmember Louis George is online. Councilmember Matt Fruman is here in person. So we're doing 8-minute rounds. So Councilmember Louis George, why don't I turn to you first? And then Councilmember Fruman, I'll turn to you right after that.
Thank you, Chairperson Allen, for holding today's oversight hearing. I want to begin by recognizing that WMATA provides an essential service to residents across the district. Buses and trains are critical for getting people to work, to school, to medical appointments, and for staying connected to family, friends, and community. Because of that, ensuring our transit system is safe, reliable, and accessible for everyone must remain a top priority. We have a shared responsibility to build the strongest transit system possible, one that offers equitable access regardless of neighborhoods, allows immigrant residents to travel without fear, and treats the workers who keep the region moving with dignity and respect as the system evolves. I'm so grateful for the headways our WMATA system has made and the ways they have shown up in our neighborhood, in our community. I am grateful for their continued partnership in Ward 4 as we develop the Northern bus garage and as we continue to provide bus services to all of our neighborhoods throughout Ward 4. With the principles noted in mind, I do have several questions today, particularly around the issues of directly impacted residents of Ward 4. These questions touch on transit access and reliability, public safety and law enforcement practices, and the future of our workforce as WMATA considers increased automation. To start, I want to start with residents of Chevy Chase and Barnaby Woods have long raised concerns about bus service in their neighborhood. With only two routes, the C83 and C85 effectively serving much of the area, residents do not have equitable access to bus services. These routes infrequently operate infrequently, and the C85 does not run on weekends. While I appreciate the progress that has been made to address transit concerns for residents of the Knollwood community, I remain concerned about overall transit accessibility in this part of the ward. So, Director, could you explain WMATA's decision to limit bus service in these particular neighborhoods, particularly given the high proportion of seniors, households without vehicles, and transit-dependent drivers in this area?
Okay, sorry. Good morning, Councilmember. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for the question. I'll say a quick thing and then I'll pass it on to Mr. Jones on the specific route. So on bus service, Metro has a visionary bus network that our goal is to run more service during the day, more frequency, more span of hours, and more days of the week. We did the Better Bus Network redesign through a lens of equity and accessibility to get more people that access. And as I said in my opening remarks, we were able to deliver 7% more bus service for the same amount of dollars. With that said, there are clearly gaps all over the region, not just in the district, that Metro would love to fill. In this current budget, we have that my proposed budget of the board has about an $8 to $10 million increase on bus service. Now that is for the board's consideration. I will say that we are hearing from lots of people concerned about obviously investment levels as well. So all of this comes down to the availability of dollars to support the bus system. So we will continue to work on everything we can do for cost efficiency. Last year, every dollar we saved allowed us to run more service. Part of the cost this year is covered by cost efficiencies to run more service. But ultimately, the only way to get to our visionary network would be significant investments by our three jurisdictional partners to say that they would like to run additional bus service. Well, on the specific routes, Leroy, do you have any comments on the specific routes?
Yep. So good morning, Councilmember Lewis George. On the C85, we can follow back up with you on that in a little bit more detail and let you know if that's part of the visionary network, so we can get back to you on that specifically. But regarding the point about the C83, I appreciate you acknowledging the work that the team has done to restore service back into the parking lot at the Knollwood Retirement Home after working with the complex to provide access to our full-size buses. So every opportunity we get to work with our partners, we're doing that to make the network as best as possible.
Okay. I appreciate your efforts there. And if you all can get back to me on sort of whether there's any plans to expand weekend service or increase frequency along the C85 route. That's just something we are hearing consistently from neighbors in our Barnaby Woods, Hawthorne, and Chevy Chase community that I wanted to make sure we were able to raise. In addition to that, I did want to ask questions regarding residents have concerns regarding Metro Transit Police and their coordination with federal agencies. Reports of this coordination are deeply concerning, and I'm worried about the chilling effect these actions may have on immigrant residents' ability to move freely and safely throughout the city they call home, especially for Ward 4, particularly our Petworth Metro station, where we've had a number of incidents occur, as well as Fort Totten, which is between Ward 5 and Ward 4, but service Ward 4 residents. Particularly, these are areas with high concentration of immigrant community members and also have had consistent instances of federal coordination that myself was able to go out once and witness. So I just want to ask Mr. Clark, which federal agencies does the Metro Transit Police coordinate with? And when did this coordination begin? And what is the justification for this coordination?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First, I'd start off and really proud of the efforts of the Transit Police Department, the lowest crime year we've ever had in the history of Metro. And we leaned in very heavily. It's one of the things that I've been very committed to since I got here, which is community engagement, community partnership. We have a youth advisory council. Last 2 weeks ago was, I think, the largest meeting, well over 100 people at that meeting with all of our officers at headquarters. We have a youth basketball league that we're involved in, a community backpack, as you mentioned, in Fort Totten, where we have thousands of students and families show up. So it is a big part of our DNA. Serving the community and the trust of the community is critical for the policing of the community. On the question of federal, the only federal connection we have is related to President Trump signed, and I apologize the exact date, I can't remember it. I think it was sometime in the summer, if I recall. Time is a hard thing right at the moment. And it's called the Make DC Safe Again, I think is whatever I recall the task force name was. We were specifically mentioned in that, Metro Transit Police Department. So we are both legally required to participate. What that really means is we have a few officers that are dedicated to that task force related to us. They mostly do enhanced patrol. I'm told by the chief, and I've been out multiple times, it's mostly like IRS police and park police, things of that nature. And they do some extra patrols around some stations. But that is our limit on what we do with federal agencies. Obviously, Transit Security Administration, so TSA, has a surface policing division within their framework. They once in a while will do some joint kind of bomb dog kind of activity like that, but they are mostly principled at airports, and sometimes will supplement us on big special events and things like that.
Do you have sort of any information or data that you all have collected regarding sort of if an individual has been stopped from for sort of a transit offense like fare evasion, and then have they been then taken by federal agents via ICE as a result of those infractions?
Yeah, two things on that. So for just general clarity, if we make an arrest on our system, whatever jurisdiction we are in, that's where that person is then booked and held. Metro Transit Police, Metro has no holding facility. So in the district, we would take that person to a precinct and a district office, and they would book, and then whatever procedures MPD would have related to, in this case, I think your question's ICE.
ICE, yes.
Would be dealt with, same as if that was Montgomery County, Prince George's, et cetera. Second is on fare enforcement. The only way you would get arrested is if you refused to comply or you had a warrant. And we have caught hundreds of people with warrants or illegal weapons. They've then been arrested and they've been then taken to that local jurisdiction. What happens to them after that is really then between the local jurisdiction and a federal department.
Got it. And in your pre-hearing responses, you referenced one of the Metro Transit Police.
Councilmember Lewis-George?
Yes.
We're about a minute over, so I was going to turn to Councilmember.
I thought I didn't count my opening statement as.
Stay, I will be here.
I just want to know, but I will come back.
I appreciate it. Please stick around for another round, but let me turn to Councilmember Freeman now.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Councilmember Lewis-George. So on the tap and pay, I guess I'll give you like 30 seconds if you want to kvel about it. That's a Yiddish word, like say how great it is. But then I'm curious if you can speak to what are the possibilities in terms of technical refinements. I mean, one of the things that I think folks in other jurisdictions do is if a rider uses their card enough in a month that they would qualify for a monthly card, then it'll be capped. And then there's also the challenge of reduced fare riders who are not covered by the tap and pay at this point. So can you speak to the tap and pay and how we can improve it going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you. Good seeing you, council member. So one, I think you just talked about how great it is. So we'll take that 30 seconds and dedicate it to that. So thank you. So what we call tap, ride, and go is what's called open loop payment technology, which allows someone to use their credit card, debit card, or we always had phone and watch, but it had to be connected to a smart trip. Now you don't need that connection. So you can just tap phone, watch, debit, credit card, and go. I think we've already had about 10 million, if I recall, trips on that. So it's definitely being used. On the rail side, the biggest stops are the airports, Union Station, for obvious reasons. But also now we're seeing is a lot of infrequent travelers don't have to worry about, oh, where's that smart trip card? I know people that tell me they got like 15 of these at home that use them once in a while. Now they could just do that. We're seeing it now increase on the bus system as well. And actually towards your area, the D80, which runs from Friendship Heights to Union Station, my understanding is the top tap, ride, and go on the bus system. How we want to improve overall fare kind of availability and kind of customer friendliness around fare is not really related to that technology, although it can play into it. Where we want to go is our back of house system, and we're currently looking at ways to kind of upgrade our back of house system. And at all times, anyone will be able to pay. So right now, you mentioned someone that might be on, say, our low income, which is Metro Lift program. You don't have to be on tap, ride, and go for that. You have your issued card, and you can go about that. If you are, say, the federal government or a lot of other employers have the smart benefits program, you would use your normal card. If you're a senior, we heard all the time, what about seniors with tap, ride, and go? Just continue to use your senior card, right? So the idea here is to make a lot of tools available for a variety of types of people that might have different types of needs or wants in the fare system. Long term, our goal is to kind of add some gamification and incentive partner programs in that. So could be partnering with our sports teams on if you buy X ticket that the Metro Pass is loaded onto that. Seattle Kraken do that with the Seattle Sound Transit System as an example, and something we've had a couple of early conversations with some sport teams on. Long term, I'd love to see us collaborate with the tolling authorities and parking and truly have what most people call mobility as a service, which you would see in places like Singapore and other pretty high-tech places around the world, where if you use Metro X amount of days, maybe you get one free toll ride a week or month because that's more of an emergency thing. So Metro is open to working with any partners, including DC on parking, to tolls, to anything else that might bring all this together, including our bike share program.
Okay, wonderful. Do you see a day where the machines in the stations are gone or become unnecessary, the card machines, or do you think that this will always be a complementary way of paying as opposed to a replacement?
We're actually Councilmember, in a procurement right now for new ticket vending machines. They'll be definitely different. There's going to be less of them, but they will be different. These vendors are, in a lot of ways, almost look like big smartphone. They could distribute other types of things as well. They provide really high reliability, very low maintenance. Much more tech-oriented, and they might do things like directions and your fare vending at the same time. So they might interact with remote customer assistance at the same time. That's kind of the best in standard around the world that's moving that way.
Okay, all exciting. The sports team piece, a very important one. I think we talked about this in the Commander Stadium discussions, and I think maximizing folks' use of transit is got to be our shared goal for those days and for every day.
We would like that. It's ultimately, as you know, the debate is always who pays.
Yeah.
And so Metro obviously isn't going to pay for people to take the train and bus. So it's all about partnerships and trying to work out the right business methodology to make that happen.
Terrific. Okay, I have limited time. Western Bus Garage, as you know, like a very important site in Ward 3. And I understand it's out of the capital plan, but right now, what needs to happen in order for it to get back in the capital plan?
Great question, Councilmember. We need DMV moves funding approved by the 3 jurisdictions. And if that happens, now it will be put into the 10-year CIP, and we can work with our partners, I know yourself as Councilmember, and the district to move that program forward.
So that's what it is. We need to close the deal on DMV moves this year.
Yes, sir. Right now, Virginia is considering legislation. I'm actually going down to Richmond later today. There's a bill on the Senate side and on the House side. There's been a bill filed in Maryland on the Senate side and the House side. Basically we have 6, 7, 8 weeks to try to get all 3 jurisdictions lined up here. The funding is not needed this year. The agreement is needed so then we can sustainably run our bond program and build that long-term capital program.
Okay, perfect. And so should that happen, do you own the Lord and Taylor site yet?
Yes, sir. That's a Metro-owned facility.
Okay, great. Even if
Has it been shoveled?
I haven't noticed.
Okay, I just wanted to, preemptively, I'll make sure it's taken care of.
I mean, actually, it's not particularly used, which is where my next question
Okay.
goes. If we were going to do the Western Bus Garage, when we do the Western Bus Garage, it's going to take a while. So it's going to sit there for 5 years.
It's all based on the funding, sir. The
So-
faster we get that funding, the faster we can move that site forward.
But in the interim, could you be open to discussions about ways to use that site? For example, the garage needs to come down at some point. Could we bring the garage down? Could we put playing fields there? Not on your nickel, but in partnership with the city.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we'd love to have deeper conversations with you. We're always about partnership. I would say, I would think that adding playing fields for tens of millions of dollars to then put them out a couple of years later might not be the most strategic element, but we are open to ways to make that site valuable for the community in a transition period. But what we'd like to do is get to work on the site. We cannot run 60-foot buses out of our current Western Bus Garage. The D80 is our fastest growing route. There's many routes that we would love to add 60-foot buses to, which we hear all the time is about frequency, reliability, and capacity. So quite frankly, DMV moves passing is so critical. And I think the Western is a great example of why it's not just about that site in your ward. That means better bus service for people all over parts of the city.
Okay, 100%. I'm not going to cheat and ask another question and go over. So thank you very much. I think the
Okay.
other topics I was going to cover, I'm sure will be covered by
Okay,
others.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman and General Manager. Great job of working DMV moves into the answer as well as helping make it very relatable rather than this kind of big concept, but what it really means on the ground. So appreciate that. All right, let me jump into a couple of topics. So we had asked, as we do every agency, to provide a table regarding number of employees hired and separated from WMATA in FY25 and in FY26 to date. If my math is correct, following the table, that table shows 2,035 new hires at the agency, which was offset by 1,757 separations. So that would say that's a net gain of about 278 positions over FY25 and 26. I'm going to say that's a good thing. Overall, from a vacancy perspective, can you talk about what the overall vacancies are at the agency now, what the total number would be?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, I'm looking at the same table. I don't see a total on that table, so thank you for doing the math. I'll take your word that that is the correct math. On the vacancy side, I would call it not monolithic, similar to DC government. Vast types of different categories of people, classifications of employees, departments. So we may have some departments that have a very, very small vacancy rate, like we might have 2% in our legal department. But in our police department, we might still be at 10%.
I guess, are there any particular trends you're noting within those clusters as we look at what looks like a net gain of 278 positions? What are some of the trends you've seen?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what our focus area is, and I think this relates to trends. Bus operators, and I know people get frustrated when they see operator availability notice. We leaned into being transparent. So I think historically that would have been just, there's no bus, and now we're trying to actually be transparent and explain why. So kind of double-edged sword, I guess, on the transparency, but we think it's the right thing. So bus operators, bus mechanics, and we've actually ramped up our bus mechanics significantly, which is really important for maintaining overtime management and also reliability of fleet. Police has been a very big focus for us to get our ranks built back up, just like you're doing in the district. And we finally have stabilized, and now we're growing again, which is good. We've been under strength for a while, and we're going in the right direction. The other thing that we've done is we did multiple federal employee-specific hiring events. And we know there's a lot of talented people in this region that have either lost their job or riffed or took the voluntary. And that has helped us on everything from accounting and finance, which we have some gaps that we're trying to work to fill, procurement, planning, and things of that nature. So I think the trend is people want to work at Metro. Last year, we had 65 intern spots, and we had almost 2,500 applications. This year, we have 100 internship spots, and this, I think it's even more than 2,500. So Our trends are going in the right direction. On the bus the bus operators, clearly the most important position for us because it's the largest classification and it's the one that we, for lack of better, go through the most just because of retention or attrition. We are finally making good strides on that. Our goal is 500 this year on the bus operator classification. We just did a graduation ceremony, Leroy and I, on Friday with another 71 frontline employees. A big chunk of them are bus operators. So every month we are actually gaining back on the bus operator count. And we hope by late spring and early summer, we'll be back to fully authorized or close to fully authorized bus count.
So, and that's a great segue, Mr. Jones, back into the conversation you were looking at earlier. So when we talk about bus operator availability, and you can use part of that answer you just had around this most recent graduation. So as of January 12th, the response we got back, there were 119 vacant bus operator positions. So how many have we onboarded since that time? And that could include part of what you just talked about with the graduating class just last week, it sounds like.
So sure, appreciate the follow-up question on that. So as of last week, we are 50 vacant positions for the position of bus operator. So we are actually exceeding the forecast that Mr. Clark just mentioned. With that being said, we're just under 2%. I believe the response that was provided, we were right around a little over 4% vacancy rate for bus operators. But with that being said, there's a significant amount of work that's being done by the human capital team. They're attending career fairs. They're out also conducting information sessions. They're partnering with organizations that have CDL training programs. We have 2 CDL lots to increase the capacity for our trainers, our training program. Over the last few training classes, we brought in over 90 bus operators. Today, we onboarded over 45 bus operators, and we're going to onboard another 45 to 50 people in another 2 weeks. So we're really ramping up and leaning in on the training. Going back to our human capital team, so our recruitment efforts are so strong that we've had up at any given point up to 1,000 people in the pipeline, meaning application, meaning they're going through the screening process, they've been made offers, they're going through background and medical and have received offer letters. So we have people that's waiting to join the team. In fact, so much so that we have people that's on a long wait list because people are just eager to join the team and the team is working hard in human capital to bring them on board. We're also working with our union partners. Recently, we reached an agreement to implement a 4-day work week, right? To make the position of station manager, bus operator, and train operator more attractive to folks, to give people more flexibility in the year of 2026. So we're looking forward to implementing that at our Shepherd Parkway division and 3 rail divisions this upcoming summer. One of the things I will say as well is that bus is much different than rail, right? So obviously when we have missed trips, it's a bad thing. One missed trip from our perspective is too many, but it's not just because of the bus operator availability issue. It's traffic, it's accidents, it's incidents that happen outside of our control. Bus doesn't have as much dedicated right-of-way as our rail system. Rail has its own dedicated guideway, and this is why projects such as increasing bus lanes and the future of BRT is so critical for bus service being the best it possibly could be in the future for this region.
Really glad you worked that in too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, if I could add just one small thing to that.
Okay.
I know time
My
is
time is ticking down. I'm going to go
a
fast.
year and a half ago, we put a hiring freeze on because of unpredictability of our operating budget. It took almost 9 months to dig out from that 3-month hiring freeze. And that just gives you an example of how much we attrit and how we have to keep
We're
going.
feeling it in every DC agency that went this.
Yeah, and the other part is
Let
we
me,
did the
let me
better
just,
bus
I only have a
network
minute left. I
redesign.
want to make sure I get through a couple other questions on the operator side. So when the graduation, for example, last week, to help the public and the riding public know, does that mean that that bus operator, those additional 50 or 60 or whomever, are they actually now on a bus operating a route, or is there continued training from there until they are fully deployed as an operator?
So the majority of the folks who actually graduated last week, they are actually out working.
Okay.
There may be a handful of folks that may need additional route training, and especially the conditions that we're operating in today. But the majority of those people are actually out operating the bus, contributing to providing bus service to the region.
Got it. And then what's the timeline from the moment someone has gone through the application process and they're hired to the time that they are now actually driving that bus, operating that bus out on their route? What does that time and training look like, just so we kind of get a sense of what it looks like until they're actually adding one more bus onto that route?
Sure, it depends on the background of the person, meaning their experience. If they come in with transit experience, we put them through a 5-week training program, okay? If a person comes in without a CDL and they have a learner CDL and no transit experience, they're going through the 10-week program.
Okay. All right. So it's either going to be 5 or 10, but roughly after 10 weeks, that person is out. Okay.
Yes.
That's helpful. I know my time is up on this round, so let me turn to Councilor Lewis George, who's still with us for another round.
Thank you, and that was really exciting news to hear about the graduating class. So congratulations, and I'm so excited for those new members of your community and how that's going to translate into more reliable and better bus service for all of us across the region. I wanted to just close up on my last line of questioning around ICE and coordination, and just wanted to understand, are there any steps that Transit WMATA is taking, GM, to help or stop individuals or just ensure individuals are safe who may be targeted based on how they look or their immigration status? Is there any steps that you all are taking and considering or thinking about in helping protect our neighbors?
Thanks for the question, Councilmember. I'm a little struggling to how to answer that because I'm not sure what the question is. So
Okay, well, let me.
the police department is to protect the community, our customers, and our staff every single day. Maybe if you could help me better understand. I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm not
No
sure.
problem.
what that question is.
In your pre-hearing responses, you referenced one of the Metro Transit Police's key initiatives and quotations. This is in your pre-hearing responses as National Guard High Visibility Support. What does this initiative entail?
Well, okay, so in relation to the National Guard, council member, the National Guard obviously not also under Metro authority. And we have worked as collaboratively as we can with the National Guard. So General Blanchard, who is mission commander for the National Guard, those assets have been deployed via the president and the Secretary of Defense. And we are, basically providing facilities for them to have break space. They do patrols inside the station. They do coordinate closely with our police department. We have a lot of special police out there as well. Generally speaking, I've seen them everything from help elderly people, on an escalator to they have had maybe a few dozen situations where they've helped either detain or assist a special police or trans police officer if it's been, somebody committing a crime in the station or something like that. But they don't have arrest authority. They're there just to, if one of our officers was in the station and doing something, that might happen. A few of them have also been assaulted. And then obviously they'd be detained and then they call transit police to come, and it'd either be transit police or Metro or MPD that would show up if it was in the district to actually effectuate that arrest. But that's, I guess, what we mean by coordination. Again, this is all hypothetical, whether we wanted the National Guard there or not, we don't have that option. They are federally deployed and we are trying to work with them as collaboratively as possible. And I will say we asked, a good example was there was a lot of long guns when they first got here, and we said, would it be helpful if we could have pistols on the National Guard members instead of long guns? And appreciate the general went and got a lot of people certified to have pistols versus long guns. Just trying to make the system feel a little more normal than the long gun operation.
Got it. So this initiative is basically to provide the National Guard with support in Metro property and in the Metro system. Is that correct? I'm just trying to make sure I understand what this key initiative is that's highlighted in the responses.
Yeah, I apologize if the wording in the response, I don't want to overstate it's,
Gotcha.
they've been a value add for us in the last year of being other eyes and ears on the system. But at the end of the day, they do their deployments. We don't coordinate their deployments.
Gotcha.
Every day I walk into a station, they're either there, they're not there. Just like you might see them walking down the street in the district.
I appreciate that. And given the 2 lost lives we had of service members who sacrificed their lives, and as we continue to honor their sacrifice, has Metro Transit taken any additional steps since we lost the lives of those 2 honorable members of the National Guard in providing any additional supports?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councilmember. So initially, just like I believe MPD did, we did as much partnering with an officer with the National Guard deployed as possible.
Okay.
That was just not resource realistic for a small. So it was, I think, helpful for a few days, up to about a week. Ours is a little different than MPD in the sense of our officers are in stations, riding trains, our special police. So there's naturally just a little bit more of interaction per se, even though it's not coordinated deployment, but I think interaction. And I think there's a good working relationship of everyone just trying to make sure the system is as safe as possible. And quite frankly, trying to make a friendly space too for people to go through. A lot of people say hi, good morning, and just trying to keep the jet. They also interact a lot with our station managers, rail operators, bus operators, custodians, which I know they've told me they appreciate the extra eyes and ears around the system as well.
Got it. And just to follow up on my previous question, what steps is WMATA taking, if any, to ensure that immigrant riders are not detained by immigration enforcement while using public transit? And if the answer is no, it's none, that's okay as well. But I'm just asking if there are any steps WMATA is taking to ensure that immigrant riders are not detained by immigration enforcement while using transit.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. At Metro, every single customer is treated the same for us, and we want everyone to have a safe system access and safe trip on our system. I'm not aware of any activity that has happened on from ICE on a bus, a train, or a station at all. And I've double checked that with the chief multiple times. He's not aware of any ICE interaction on a bus, train, or station. I know there's a lot of things on social media. We are not aware of any activity related to ICE on our system.
Understood. I want to move to the Northern Bus Garage timeline. What is the now updated timeline on, I guess, completion of outside construction? And then what can be communicated to neighbors about when the bus garage actually will be up and running and contain some of the exciting things people were excited about around retail and community space?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. We can give you a follow-up on the very specifics of that. I believe we're into 2028 for a final, big ribbon cutting and celebrating the space. I do know that we're going to try to do that in a little bit of phased approach. The biggest, if you will, the long pole in the tent on this project is really related to charging equipment for our electric buses. There's just not a domestic supplier that meets Build America, Buy America. The one we have now found is setting up a facility, I believe in South Carolina, to produce this equipment for us and a couple other transit agencies. And that is a significant lead time and led to some delays on the project. So we are working as diligent as we can. We'd love to activate those community and retail spaces as early as we can as well. And I'll have the team do a follow-up on a little bit more granular timeline as we have that.
Thank you. The Georgia Avenue bus lanes, me and Councilmember Doe are really excited. As you know, dedicated bus lanes are something I'm deeply passionate about and believe it will help our system overall. What's the timeline on that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. We would love that to be tomorrow, and but we are working with our partners at DDOT. It's also, I mean, it's a district project because it's the district street. We are in close coordination with that. There's a few, the Benning Road to Georgetown to Roslyn, Crosstown's important, Georgia Ave's important. We have some others as well. We would love to constantly push for more red paint around the city, for sure.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilmember. Let me follow up just on, I had a couple of questions I was going to ask around National Guard, and so since that conversation was earlier, Councilmember Lewis George asked some of my questions, but a couple others I just wanted to ask on that topic. Does WMATA have a current memorandum of understanding or any other formal agreement with the National Guard that dictates their roles, what they're allowed or not allowed to do?
Not that I'm aware of. I can double check that we didn't. I don't believe we signed one. So just to be clear, they don't have to sign anything with us. They are under federal direct order from executive order from the president and Secretary of Defense. So whether we said we want you to do this or not, they don't have to comply with. They are federally assigned, and that's just. I mean, I know people get frustrated with, I've heard Metro, why don't you kick the National Guard out of your stations or do this and the other? And again, I'm not saying we would want to do that, but if we did, we still don't have any authority to do that. Just like if ICE came. And I know that's a big topic that the council members just mentioned. We don't have any authority. These are federal federal officers and on federal mission that have the availability to come into our space. With that said, we've had multiple meetings with the general. I do believe the National Guard has worked very collaboratively with us, and I appreciate. Look, there's a lot of mostly young National Guard members from all over the country that are trying to do the right thing, and I think are being very friendly to most of our customers, working with our station staffs, custodians, and provide those extra eyes and ears for the system. So we're going to continue to do that, and when that mission ends, then that'd be someone else when the mission ends.
Yeah, I'm not going to fault the 24-year-old who volunteered for the Guard from South Carolina to help pay for college or be able to qualify to buy a home for their family, right? I do think they've been tasked for the wrong mission, and it's part of our responsibility to help understand what it is and what it isn't, and where we have those guardrails. So you're saying WMATA has no control whatsoever. National Guard can just come in, set up anytime.
Yes, they are under federal directive.
Okay. So it sounds like the relationship is much of just your personal relationship with somebody in the National Guard then. For example, you made the right decision, I believe, to say, you got to get the long guns out of here. It didn't make me feel any safer. It didn't make anybody else feel safer to be watching military weapons marched around through the station. But that wasn't part of an MOU or any type of formal agreement. That was a relationship agreement.
I don't know. That'd be your word. I would say that was a request we made, and we appreciate the general considering it and implementing that request. But again, if you went to Europe, you would see long guns at almost every large rail station in Europe. That's standard operating procedure. If you went to New York City, you would see special operations through Penn Station with long guns. If you went to Amtrak and Union Station, we deploy our long gun teams once in a while. I think it is a little more rare here, but I would suggest that is pretty standard in a lot of places in the world related to large train infrastructure places.
I don't believe it's what I want to see on our metro system. It's not what I want to see on my ride, and I don't feel safer seeing a bunch of people walking around with long guns. In the same way when they walk around my kid's baseball field with a bunch of rifles, it's stupid and it doesn't make us any safer. Since the National Guard has been extended now through the rest of calendar year 2026, should riders expect that they will see National Guard in our metro system through the end of 2026?
Yeah, all these, Councilmember, I respect that the politics and the feelings around National Guard, all these questions should be directed to the National Guard. This is not a metro-related topic. We are not, it's like walking down the sidewalk. They can walk into DuPont Station or Capitol South or any other station. They have federal orders, and that's what they are following. So I know, I appreciate that people have
questions to ask the general manager of our metro system in terms of.
But respectfully, I've asked and answered that at the end of the day, that we do not have control of the National Guard or other federal departments that are under federal directive, and we are working as collaboratively as we can to help us with safety and security inside of our system.
All right, so your hands are tied when it comes to National Guard and their deployments.
I don't have hands in it, I guess is the way I would describe I think it's fair questions if the council wants to direct them to the National Guard and have that conversation about the type of deployment and why and where and the value of those.
We can ask National Guard, but you're the general manager of WMATA, so we can ask you too in terms of what that collaboration and coordination looks like.
I'm sorry, I thought I've answered that multiple times. Like I'm not trying to avoid the question or be defensive. They come to our property, they patrol, they interact with our staff, and if they see an incident going on, they help with that incident. And that could be everything from they detain someone until if they saw an assault happen, they would detain that person until MTPD, or maybe it's MPD on a joint response gets there. Could be a special police officer that they've helped with the situation, or they could be just helping the station manager with luggage, getting somebody out of the station.
What I'm trying to get is, if there's no formal agreement, there's no MOU, there's no structure there, whether there are rules of engagement or what that coordination looks like. If someone is being assaulted and we want that National Guard person to help out, we're both going to want to have somebody help them out. But there's no structure around, here's who you call, here's how you navigate that. Or that is just more, it's the relationship being built.
Well, the structure, we obviously, they report back to a central place, and back to this federal task force, and we have our staff embedded into that task force. So if a call happens, it gets routed the proper way. And so obviously the protocols have been built for people to know who to call if they need help. I assume it's the exact same way where we would say topside outside of our station. If the National Guards had an incident or saw something on a street, my assumption is they have protocols with MPD to get police assistance related to that.
Okay, so there's no formal WMATA protocol. It is protocol through the task force.
Correct. We're part of the federal task force.
Okay. Let me stick on public safety just for a little bit. You talked about the hiring for MTPD. So at one point, I think we'd had, maybe a couple of years ago, almost upwards of 40% vacancy rate within MTPD. I believe, if I'm looking at the report that you had shared in terms of your responses in FY24 and FY25, MTPD had 13 officers separate. I'm trying to ask slowly while you turn your pages there. MTPD had 13 officers separate, but hired 26, so a net gain of 13 officers. What would be our vacancy rate for MTPD officers at this point now? And again, I know probably a couple of years ago, I think we were up around somewhere around 40% of a vacancy rate, which matches what many police forces around the country were struggling with hiring for officers.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember. I don't have the vacancy rate. We can follow up with you today or later today or tomorrow on that. We are slowly but surely eating into that. We're nowhere near 40%, that's for sure. I think we have fully authorized around 480, and I think we're about 400. And those could be off by a little, either one of those, but I think that's generally where we are. Having our own police academy has been a very big deal for this organization. We just graduated off 11 or 13 officers 2 weeks ago, and we currently have 24, I believe, in the current class. So our goal here is to get as close as we can to our fully authorized headcount.
Yep. And then for the officers going through the training academy, what is the we talked earlier about the bus operators, how long it takes for that, for individuals that are hired and going through that training academy, what does that window of time look like until they're trained and fully out?
Yeah, I can get you this, but I think it's 8 to 10 months, depending on where, again, depending on a little bit like Leroy said, you might have some background that helps. The uniqueness of our police is they're certified in 3 states, which is additional time, obviously, than you would have. And then you got in-field training as well on top of that.
Okay, excellent. We've been joined by my colleague Wendell Felder from Ward 7. So Councilor Felder, thank you for joining us. If you're ready, I'll turn to you for a round of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for conducting this morning's important oversight hearing. Mr. Clark, it's always a pleasure to see you and members of your senior leadership team. I'll jump right in. My questions will be centered around the Better Bus Network, as well as just a couple of questions about RFK. So I'll start with just some general questions about the Better Bus Network, just to make sure I fully understand it. And I know for those who are watching, they may have similar questions. So, Mr. Clark, could you describe in your own words what the Better Bus Network is and what it was designed to accomplish?
Yeah, hi, really good seeing you, Councilmember. Thank you for that question. So I'm joined by Leroy Jones. He's our Chief Operating Officer. I'll make a quick comment, and I can hand it to him if you want more follow-up on that. Generally speaking, we have a theme called Better Bus, and it makes up a variety of things, one of which is the network redesign.
Okay.
Other elements are, say, bus priority lanes or dedicated bus lanes. Part of it is better buses themselves. Part of it is our training. Part of it is technology on our buses, all-door boarding. A variety of factors make up what we call Better Bus.
Okay.
How we designed the network was really trying to connect more people to jobs, healthcare, and education using the same amount of resources we had. Most Better Bus Network designs, if equivalency around the country, were done to add money to run more bus service. We did not have that available funding.
Okay.
So obviously we had to make some changes, but overall more people have better access to the bus than before the network.
Okay. Could you speak to what have been the major challenges with implementing the Better Bus Network?
So first one, thank you for the question. To get to your question about some of the challenges, it was a 3-year planning process, right? And working with our employees, our union partners, our regional partners, as well as elected officials, and engaging a lot with our customers, we put out what we were planning to do and got a lot of feedback and took all of that feedback into consideration. Again, just collaboration with our regional partners were appreciated. I did just want to call out DC, the district, and DDOT, and the collaboration throughout the process. The planning and the implementation process was just huge. From our perspective, the challenges has been the things that we didn't know how the network was going to operate, right? Particularly, there were some opportunities to do some things a little differently. So since the network has been implemented, we have made changes to 15 routes specifically in DC. I did want to call out a few routes just for a few examples. First, one of the things that we learned was that when we set the route up for the C63 and the D36, it wasn't hitting customer expectations and, quite frankly, meeting our expectations to provide the best customer service to people who were trying to get to the VA hospital as well as to Washington Hospital Center and providing them direct access. Since then, we have worked with DDOT as well as our partners over at the VA as well as the Washington Hospital Center to get direct access to the hospital center. In addition, we have worked with our VA partners to get a concrete pad poured to provide better accessibility. One of the other things that we've learned along the way was, as I mentioned earlier, about the C83. We restored service into the parking lot of the Knollwood Retirement Home after working with the complex to accommodate full-size buses. In addition, the C53, there were a few things that were brought to our attention, particularly on 8th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast. Councilmember Allen himself had raised some safety concerns about one particular stop. We have made some adjustments to that stop, so that was addressed. Also, on 24th Street, we worked with DDOT to add no parking to be able to make sure that our bus coming off of Calvert can make that right turn. They also restriped the stop bar, and then also installed. I'm sorry.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do have a couple questions. And one of my questions, you mentioned Pennsylvania Avenue. I'll talk about that in a second. But just a follow-up question, like how does WMATA, or rather what indicators are WMATA using to really determine the effectiveness of the Better Bus Network?
Sure. A couple of things. We always monitor on-time performance.
Okay.
Right. Customer service surveys in terms of customer satisfaction. We listen to what our customers are telling us. So those are a few that we actually use, and then also hearing from our employees directly. So the frontline bus operators, they're actually out there operating the bus every single day. So we've gotten a significant amount of feedback, and then we also track ridership. So when you think about the customer satisfaction survey, one of the things that we saw in the first quarter, we did see bus customer satisfaction take a slight dip, which wasn't necessarily unexpected when you go through such a change such as we did. But we're working to bring that back up. On-time performance is actually up 1% year over year from FY25 to FY26. So we are seeing some wins in terms of how the network is actually performing, but also acknowledging that there's still some opportunities to improve as well.
So what directly are you hearing from your constituents? What would you say is working well, what's not working well? I know you guys have been operational for a couple months.
Sure. So I'll give you a couple examples. One that's actually working well, the D74. It's a new route that connects Rhode Island Avenue, Brooklyn, Petworth, and Columbia Heights and Adams Morgan, just providing that access and the frequency to those areas. That's definitely something that we're hearing from our customers, and the data supports that. And also an opportunity where the team actively just finished an assessment of the D50 and the D5X, obviously on 14th Street, one of our busiest corridors for bus service and just in general for traffic in the city. One of the things that we heard from two things we heard from our customers. One, we potentially eliminated too many bus stops, and then also it may not be enough frequency. So just for additional background, prior to the circulator ending, you had the circulator, you also had the 52, the 54, as well as the 59, a significant amount of service on 14th Street. So we've gone back, taken a look at it, and the team is actively working to see what is possible for the upcoming service change in the summer for 14th Street.
Copy. Okay. Because of the snowstorm, I've received a number of concerns from residents who live in the Fort Davis, Fort DuPont area, and they talked about these routes are along the Better Bus route to include, give me 1 second, just want to make sure That I'm not misspeaking. Okay, from Southern Avenue and Fort DuPont Street Southeast, from Southern Avenue to Suitland Terrace Street Southeast, and then when you get along to 38th Street and W Street, 38th Street Southeast and V Street Southeast, 38th Street Southeast and Pennsylvania Avenue, the bus route has suspended. And they've reached out to my office, WMATA, and they're still a week hasn't been gone, a week has passed and they still don't have any bus service. How does that process work?
Yep, so thank you for the question. As we talked a little bit about earlier, 46 of our 54 routes are back on normal route.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we were faced with a storm that had a significant impact on our bus operations. What we did as an agency, we worked very closely with our DDOT partners. We embedded a person over in DPW Snow Command to establish a direct line of communication to share our priorities. We worked very closely to get that information over to them. And also, we actually went out to help plow streets, clear bus stops to make sure that we could restore service as quickly as possible. However, as indicated earlier, Metro is not necessarily legally responsible for street clearing and clearing bus stops, but we did the best we could in working with our jurisdictional partners, not just DC, to provide as much bus service as possible during and after the storm.
And my final question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. How is that communicated to the public? Like if there is going to be a suspension of bus service?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. We pride ourselves on transparency and communication, so all of our social media channels are probably the #1 thing people use. We have Metro Alerts where you can sign up and get text or phone or email alerts. Obviously, media itself, we have digital signage. We have our website, which is very extensively used. And we expect our partners, and quite frankly, we would appreciate elected officials that have our information to be pushing that to their constituents as well.
We here to serve. And it's C37. That's the bus route, C37.
Yeah, we've been operating a service like since the storm. So some of it is regular, some of it's on detour. We want to run all the service. A lot of this has to do with the streets are just not safe enough. And sometimes people will see and go, oh, that street's safe. Yes, but that's a little piece of the entire route. And there's a piece that is not safe to operate. So we're going to keep working with all of our partners until they clear the routes to allow us to run normal operation.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councilmember. Let me turn to see if Councilor Lewis George, she's still logged into Zoom, but I wasn't sure if
I
she
am
was
here.
still with us.
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. Okay, Councilor Lewis George, sorry about that. Let me turn back to you for another round.
I wanted to move to, and it's more so to, because I'll have the same question for Deputy Mayor of Education and others. We've still been having issues with school coordination around our new bus operation. For example, since my last round, my office actually just took a call regarding the C85 not picking up kids who are heading to school. So I want to ask one, can you speak to why this is the case and when parents can expect to be rectified? But I think a greater systemic question is, and it's not really your job, but there has to be some level of coordination between our schools, DC public schools particularly, and DC public charter schools, because they rely on Metro Transit. Is there someone or some department within WMATA, GM Clark, that is coordinating with the Deputy Mayor of Education and our school departments around schools, ensuring students are picked up to and from school, even when there are the days of delays, or even when, in general, when the start of school begins? What is the systemic, what does that look like within the system of WMATA working with the Executive Office of the Mayor and our school partners? And if it doesn't exist, can we get some type of person, office in place to do some of that coordination?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. It definitely does exist. I'll ask Leroy to speak on it because he actually is intimately involved with that.
Yep, so thank you for the question. So regarding the C85, definitely we'll have to follow back up with you on. That's the first time I've heard of that. But just to give you some background on all of the outreach that we've executed while implementing the Better Bus Network redesign. Prior to schools closing last school year, we had a significant outreach to a lot of the schools in DC to let them know about the changes that were coming. We did another round of outreach where we actually sent staff for rail, bus, out to the schools to engage with the students, the parents, as well as the administrators of the school to make sure that they were able to get all of their questions answered. We made our staff available, and we continue to do so. Our Vice President, Erica Cunningham, like she coordinates all of the efforts with the schools, and also Assistant Chief Transportation Officer for bus, Jewel Bell, her and her team goes out a lot to touch base with all of the schools to make sure that there are point of contacts so everyone knows who to call if there is a challenge. I will say I've been in some form of capacity in charge of bus since 2020, and I can tell you the relationship and the coordination with schools and our ability to provide great school trips for students has vastly improved, for sure. Are there opportunities to improve? Always, but we have leaned in heavily over the last 3 years to make sure that we're providing as much school service as possible, doing a lot of coordination on the front end as well as throughout the school year.
Thank you. I appreciate the efforts that have been made, and I appreciate your follow-up on the C-85. If you all could, I guess, give us, obviously, we get a ton of emails from parents and PTOs. If there's a specific email they should email towards, they feel like the one that's just bus at WMATA isn't a general one that they don't believe is sort of the responsiveness. So if we could get what email schools, PTOs can coordinate with, and we're happy to share that with them. So that way it's not sort of by a council member basis, and they have a direct line to WMATA as far as coordinating, making sure buses are there to pick up children to and from school. I wanted to ask about, in your pre-hearing responses, you all discussed increasing automation on metro lines. As these changes are considered and implemented, I just wanted to understand how you all, WMATA is addressing impact on the workforce, particularly what is WMATA doing to work with ATU to ensure that transit workers are not negatively affected by increased automation in the system?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. So I would say we have I'd like to believe, a very collaborative relationship with ATU. We always kind of say we're necessarily not going to agree on everything, but the framework since I got here is we're not going to be disagreeable. And I would like to think that, I think you're mostly referring to ATU specifically. I would like to think President Jackson would feel the same way. So I think we have a very open, good relationship, and all of our leadership team interacts with his leadership, he and his leadership team a lot on a variety of topics. I will say that Metro is great because of a great workforce. And we're always going to need a big, great workforce to deliver for this region. Now, with that said, the workforce will inevitably change just because our society changes. And so a good example would be generally speaking, no one at banks give cash out anymore, but there's lots of people that work at banks in the banking sector. So we are going to have to continue to adapt and evolve as technology does. And that's the big thing we're working on. So that might mean different types of roles that don't exist today. It also might mean upskilling or reskilling different positions for a different type of world. What we do know is if you have a position in Metro today in good standing, I don't see a scenario where any automation impacts your role. We are talking about to do all of the lines, we're 15 to 20 year program. So just a very long duration program. And again, we're going to go from a signaling department of X employees to Y, but those employees are going to have a different type of skill set and a different type of technical proficiency, but we're also going to ideally have platform screen doors, which we don't have today, and that's a different type of workforce. So, we also contract out a lot of special police operations. There's opportunities for maybe some of that to be insourced and have operators do more of that, which you would see in different markets around the world, which is more, the train attendant, train ambassador role. So we are committed to working with our workforce. We're going to have to develop a robust, probably over the next 1.5 to 2 years, transition plan. But even that transition plan is going to show that this is going to be, 5, 10, 15 years across all these enterprises. So again, I would just reiterate, I'm a big advocate of our employees. We can't be successful without great employees caring about the organization. And part of that is they need to know that we're there for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you. With that, I will yield the remaining of my time back to Chair. Thank you all for your communication, and I look forward to the follow-up on C-85 Northern Bus Garage, and other things that were discussed here today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilor Felder kind of talked about Better Bus for a good bit. I just had one other question related to that, and that was so that we can help be transparent with community members who I think come to not just myself, but all council members, is the idea that changes can happen, would they align necessarily with when the picks take place and the July and January changes? So in other words, we shouldn't expect major changes to bus routes as evolutions of the Better Bus network in between those two timeframes. It'd be twice a year. Is that more or less correct?
That's fair, yes.
Okay. Not to say you wouldn't make adjustments if you needed to mid-cycle, but that's when people would expect larger scale changes.
Correct.
Okay. I do want to flag, and we could talk about this after the hearing, obviously, but the C-55, which runs through Southwest and Buzzard Point, is one that I continue to hear feedback that it's not performing as well as we would like, and that the time between buses is just really not working for a lot of folks. So happy to follow up with you afterwards on the specifics of it, but I just want to flag that with you while we're here, that's one that I'm hearing from constituents that they would like to see that service improve and make some changes.
Yeah, I just thank Councilmember that we would like to see more service there as well. It's critical if we're going to have Audi Field perform to its highest level as well, to get people, on transit. And there's obviously an enormous amount of development happening down there, plus some, established community, and I think some significant senior housing as well. So, we've had some early discussions with DDOT around this. I think we believe that there's space maybe for some dedicated bus lanes that could really get us, using the same amount of resources, more frequency, and a higher reliability and service. So kind of early stages of that. But again, back to Councilmember George's question, which is this bus priority aspect is a big deal for all of the, whether it's better bus, cost efficiency, safety, reliability. The more space that buses can operate a little bit by themselves, the better the whole network works.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page on that. I will say for the C-55, I certainly want people to get to Audi Field for the events when those take place. I'm more concerned, though, with my longtime neighbors that have lived in Southwest and Buzzard Point who are bus dependent, and that route's not working for them as well as I think we want it to. And so would love to work with you in terms of how we can help make sure that is performing a bit better.
Yeah, of course. I just use that as an additional volume of people. We have to provide more service just for the volume.
Yep.
Obviously, the underlying piece is the regular day-to-day trips, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. All right, speaking of stadiums. All right, RFK, we held a hearing in November where we focused on, this has got to be a transit-first stadium, and I know WMATA feels the same. In the last 2 months, can you talk about what you have learned, how the assessment is going about the changes necessary at Stadium Armory Station itself, and the potential for a new station as well?
Yeah, Councilman, I don't have any further updates based on from our last hearing. I think I have, I think we had a meeting scheduled for last week, quite frankly, and it got delayed because of the storm. So I have another management team meeting on this. I think it might be as early as this week or next week. And then, again, we continue to be in tight coordination, but everyone involved in the coordination has been basically just lost an entire week of coordination.
agree with
anyway.
that.
So,
What would
so I
be the
just don't
next-
have an update.
What will be
on
the
it.
next deliverable date then in terms of information on the analysis?
I believe we thought we would have a draft by the spring and something final by the end of the summer, I think is what I may have said at that testimony. But again, we can reflect back on where we are with those milestones. We have a lot of urgency on our end to definitely get an idea of what we want to get done and work with our partners. In this case, ultimately up to the mayor and the council to figure out how to move forward on what we truly believe. And it's not just, quite frankly, for the Commander games. We believe, we got a large neighborhood population, this chance for all this development, but it's additionally, we say we want to host World Cups and Taylor Swift concerts. There's a lot to this site, and I know a lot of people are working hard on it.
Again, we're on the same page. This is more than a stadium. It's 6,000 new homes. So we want to have transit that works for the people that are going to live there, in addition to how do you manage major events. The council doesn't sit on these coordination meetings. So our visibility isn't there. So that's why we're going to keep asking you the questions, because we don't know what your assessments are yet. We want to see what those deliverables are, because we're going to have to approve the funding for all these things, and we need to make sure we have visibility into it.
Yeah, no, and again, if I had an update, I would provide it. I hope you feel like we were very transparent in the hearing on RFK, and appreciate you holding that. One thing we do feel very strongly about is a bus rapid transit from Benning all the way across town and ideally to Roslyn. That is something we know has to happen. We believe it has to happen because of our analysis of the blue, orange, silver, just resiliency point of view, let alone RFK and all the development there. So I'd like to start really starting to move that element along and probably in a multi-phased way.
Okay. I'm going to jump around a couple different topics here in my 3 minutes for this round. There's a little conversation about automation a moment ago. Wanted to ask around our ATO returning to design speeds for track segments and continued investments in frequencies as part of the response that we got back for in our pre-hearing questions. WMATA reported that the average customer trip was about a minute faster in calendar year 2025 compared to calendar year 2024. And that response was in question 2 ATO. Was that a system-wide? Like when we're looking at that metric, for example, of saving a minute. Saving a minute's a big deal, actually, for folks who may not get it. Was that a system-wide improvement, or was that along routes where more automation took place?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to actually find in the test and the responses where we said that. So the 1 minute would be for, I think the way they have that laid out is all rail trips. So depending on where you are, some people have saved 5 minutes a trip, which means if you took 2 trips a day, you just saved 10 minutes a day. Other people, so if you were traveling from Easter Market to, I don't know, Metro Center on blue, orange, and silver, you probably have saved like 15 seconds, right? Because you're not getting up to full speed and the doors are a little bit faster. So it's kind of in one way, different patterns have bigger time savings.
Yeah. And again, for anybody who's followed DMV Moves closely, you know full well, saving a couple of minutes on these trips that adds up both as a rider to get to where I got to go and saves time for me. It also starts to actually magnify dramatically in terms of savings for our agency. So WMATA is able to provide more service in some cases at even the same cost by speeding up and getting that automation. So I think it is smart that we are trying to think about, and the question that Councilor Lewis George also asked around, as we look at automation, working incredibly closely with our operators, our rail operators, ATU, and others to think about what are potential impacts on workforce, how are we thinking about it today so that we are making sure we're looking after our workers that make this whole system move and be very fair and transparent to make sure those jobs are protected or supports are given as we continue to think about that. So I'm not going to rehash that, but I think that was an important comment earlier. Completely different topic real fast. I'm going to jump over to a question around bus shelters that we get asked a good bit. So the availability of information inside of our bus shelters that tell you when the next bus is coming, very important. Not everyone's got the app put on their phone. Not everyone's going to pull that up immediately. Specifically, we've got some what I call, I guess, the e-paper signs. Kind of looks like almost like a tablet that's in the shelter there. Is that a WMATA responsibility or is that a DDOT responsibility since DDOT manages most of the shelters?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember. So I think you're referring to like what we might call a digital, like real-time information sign.
It just looks like a Kindle attached to the shelter. Yeah.
So there'll be like 2 types out there. So there's ones that almost look like a scroll bar. Those would be older, and I believe all of those would be owned by the local jurisdiction. Now there's some that are more these e-paper Kindle-looking devices. We've been adding some of those.
Okay.
Those ones we would be responsible for. Now some local jurisdictions have added theirs as well, and I can't remember if in DC that has been added by any. The shelters is a larger complex topic because individual shelters are owned by each jurisdiction. Therefore, we don't have a necessarily standard design across the region and a standard guidelines. So if you will, a regular transit agency would have bus stop and shelter guidelines, and this type of ridership or this type of location would get these types of treatments. We don't really have that here regionally because we got this confederation of regional jurisdictions that have unique controls. And so what we do is try to work with those partners as best we can to try to make the shelters and the bus stops as best as they can within their purview. So we've, on our initiative, have been installing more of these real-time signs. Now, a lot of them are at our facilities. So like if you went to a place where there might be bus rail station, we might be including some of those so people could see transfer times and things of that nature. And I think we have had some on regular routes as well. But we're not going to be adding a lot of those because we just don't have the, obviously, resources and bandwidth to manage them all. But there's some key places we want to get some more digital information up there.
Okay. I think they're great, and we can follow up afterwards. I'd love to see how many we've actually installed, what those costs are, but I think they're great. I want to turn to my colleagues. I'm going to ask, this will be our final round for the general manager because he's headed to Richmond after this. But Councilmember Felder?
Great minds think alike. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clark, just picking up where we left off, any event a rider has a concern about WMATA, whether it's a bus route, whether it is a metro station, whether it is a bus stop was removed, what is the best way to communicate those concerns, and how are you guys incorporating that feedback to improving services?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember. So there's a variety of types of comments. So we probably get 1,000 touch points a day into our contact center. So those are via email, direct message, website, social media, any of those avenues people use all day long, every day of the week. They could be everything from a compliment, which I know the team appreciates hearing when an operator or station manager or somebody does a really good job. Could be to, oh, I was on this bus and it wasn't going right. It could be, we have people that call and get directions because they don't know how to get around to a certain location. It could be a smart trip card or a fare question. All of those types of questions are handled all day long by our customer contact center. So again, email, phone, direct message, text direct message, website, social media.
Copy. I will reserve my RFK-related questions. I know Chairman Allen asked a couple of them. I will hold a hearing later on. Once I have that information, I'll reach out to you guys. But did want to just ask, I know there's some internal meetings happening pertaining to the planning and the coordination around the site. Well, my question, Mr. Clark, is are you guys open to attending a public meeting in Ward 7? I know that normally, Metro has a good team, but I also want to be mindful of your team's bandwidth. But maybe one of the things we can coordinate with once the plan is finalized, the transportation plan, is having a joint meeting in the ward.
Yeah, Councilmember, thank you. Metro, we do community meetings every single day across the whole region. So I think the key on that one, respectfully, would be coordination between us and DDOT and DEMPED and making sure everyone is on the same page. That would be the best use, I think, of a community meeting, making sure that all of the relevant partners are there together and can be responsive to the community's questions on some type of organized and unified plan.
Copy. Now, I know that there's a lot of conversations about an RFK transportation plan, but I'm thinking broadly across Ward 7. When you think about whether it's dedicated bus lanes or bike lanes, or the fact that Ward 7 has 4 metro stops, I think we have probably the most metro stops in the city. My question to you is, have you guys had any conversations with DDOT about specific ward transportation plans?
No. So, Councilmember, respectfully, we don't get into wards, things of that nature. Quite frankly, the district is only one of the things we are interested in, highly interested, obviously, and a great partner. But we have Loudoun County, Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Montgomery County, Prince George's, the state of Maryland, the state of Virginia, the federal government. So we are trying to partner with everyone, and we try not to get overly local, even though our service is very localized, if that makes sense.
So we have Minnesota Avenue Metro Station, Benton Road, Stadium Armory, and Deanwood. And then we have Potomac Avenue, which borders the ward, and Capitol Heights Metro Station. My question, Mr. Clark, is when it comes to capital improvement plans, how do you guys prioritize what metro stops needs to undertake capital improvements?
Yeah, Councilor, happy to have someone on your staff if you want, if yourself, but obviously your staff sit down, someone could go through the entire capital investment program, the 6-year, the 10-year, and the long term, how we do asset management. We definitely don't do it by a station, by a ward, by a jurisdiction. We do it by asset categories. So quite frankly, wherever the tracks are is where the tracks are. We're not like, oh, this year we're going to do a certain amount of track in DC and a certain amount of track in Maryland. We're a system, so we basically are anti-jurisdictional in one way when we come to the operating and asset management. So we do condition asset assessments. So it could be from a roof of one of our maintenance facilities to track to air conditioning to rail vehicles. And we put all those through a methodology to try to make those things perform at the highest level and last as long as we can, using the capital dollars to modernize and refresh those assets.
Copy. As a council, what can we do to better support Metro?
Well, Councilmember, why don't we use the rest 2 minutes and 45 seconds to talk about that? No, listen, I want to say I really appreciate the council's support on Metro topics. We know the council very much cares about Metro. Everyone I interact with on the council, it's good for us to be pushed, right? We have to perform at a high level. There's a big investment DC makes in Metro every year. Metro is unbelievably important for the health of the district, the economy, the quality of life, everything from getting to school to healthcare and you name it. With that said, it's DMV Moves. And DMV Moves, your colleague, Chair Allen, led a 1.5 year long initiative. And I would say nothing has been done this transparent and this collaborative across this region probably ever since maybe the forming of this organization. And it was a lot different time in the 60s. Less coordination would definitely been needed then. And this is the chance finally to solve the 50-year, so it's our 50th anniversary this year. We have never had dedicated index long-term funding at this organization, and it's led to a lot of peaks and valleys. And we're on the verge of solving that question once and for all. So if this council can move DMV Moves forward with the mayor, right now there's a bill in Virginia on the House and Senate side. There's one on the House and Senate side in Maryland. We have 6 to 8, 10 weeks, give or take, to solve this problem. And if we can do that, that support will be, quite frankly, legacy defining, because it will finally position Metro for long-term success, which means the district could build its housing, its sustainability, and its transportation goals all around knowing where Metro can be and how it can perform.
You mentioned legacy defining. I know you previously you worked in Atlanta. You came in this role.
Not Atlanta, sir. Austin.
Austin,
Yeah.
pardon me, Austin. You came to the role at a time in which WMATA was going through transformation. Now, you hit the ground running. I remember seeing on the news you were greeting riders and workers. I really thought that stood out. You've been in this role for 3 years or 2 years?
3.5.
3.5.
And on 40.
Going on 4 years. People would say that you're doing such a good job. People were asking you to look at a different role.
I've heard that.
Nonetheless,
Yeah.
What would you say your most proudest moment is with leading WMATA thus far?
Yeah, well, thanks for the kind comments, and I'm really proud of the work we do, and I'm happy to have this role, and I'd like to keep doing this role. I think that my proudest part of Metro right now is both internally and externally. I believe people feel pride in Metro, and I think the morale is much higher. The fact that people want to work for us is a really good sign of that. The people are being retained, and overall, just, if you will, the vibes inside the organization are, I think people like being recognized publicly for the work they do. Conversely, I think the Metro brand is at a very, very high level, and it's not, it's earned because of the quality of what we were delivering. And I think the transparency and honesty that we are trying to go about the work for the public is deeply appreciated. And I think that's what we as a senior team and the whole staff is really proud of, is that people value what we do. And therefore, you can really motivate your staff to give it their all when they feel that value. So thanks for recognizing the hard work of the team.
Thank you both, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. You heard all that about DMV Moves. All right. Couple final questions, and then we're going to start moving to our public witnesses. So I'm going to jump around just for a couple of quick items here. All right, Kids Ride Free program. When we get to the DDOT oversight hearing, this is going to be a topic of conversation we spend some time on, as DDOT and OSSI, our state superintendent office, are the two district agencies most responsible for implementing the program. In the WMATA responses, you noted that the Kids Ride Free mobile pay enrollment is slightly down this year from 10,000 students in FY25 to about 9,200 students in FY26. At least anecdotally, I have heard that one of the challenges with enrolling Kids Ride Free cards into mobile pay is that it works on Apple devices, but not necessarily on Android devices. Is that correct?
Two things on that, Councilmember. So one, I think we had to re-enroll everybody at the start of the calendar year, and that's why the number, so it's actually, we're really happy with that number because the team went back to zero and had to do it. One thing we'd love to do is kind of modify the Kids Ride program to not have this annual cycle all the time and resetting. So we do that differently, say, with Montgomery County, and I believe differently with Fairfax, and we'd love to think about ways. So if you're in grade 9, we're going to have you for multiple years, and how do we create that long-term card? And again, moving people to mobile is what we really want, because the more we have people on mobile, A, they don't lose their card and they tap, and B, someone else does not use their card. And unfortunately, that does happen, and we catch that. I believe it is only on Apple phone. We are trying to move Android, and it's really more of an Android kind of question. And I think we're in some type of queue, and we can get a follow-up back on that. I think this market, though, if I recall seeing, is something like 78, 80% iPhone-driven market, as maybe one of the highest in the country. So we're hitting the overwhelming majority via the iPhone process, but we can get back specifics to you on that.
Okay, great, appreciate that. Somewhat related, during our DDOT oversight hearing with the public witnesses, we had a lot of testimony around the adult learner discount fare that the district provides. Essentially, for our adult learners, they get a $70 per month balance on their registered Smart Trip cards. Basically, 75% of folks said, I'm spending $70, I run out of money before the month is up. They'd really like to switch, and they're advocating for a switch from $70 to $100. That's on us to appropriate the dollars. What I wanted to ask you is, if the district is just changing from $70 a month for that adult subsidy to $100 per month, that doesn't cost you anything. From a WMATA perspective, the purse within your Metro Smart Trip card is already established. So from executing a change, not really a hard lift on the WMATA side, right? It's more about us finding the dollars.
Yeah, the way you described it, Councilmember, would be very limited for us, and obviously it'd be just way to process more transactions.
Okay, all right. It was pretty impressive feedback that we heard from a lot of the adult learners, and obviously speaks to why transit is so important, that this is what allows them to be able to get to school and continue their education. All right, one of the things I also want to check in on was related to our revenue forecasts and then how they stack up to our actual revenue for the last several fiscal years. Specifically, I'm looking at question 25, in case you want to point to a reference here. So there was a table that WMATA had provided where we asked about actual versus projected revenue. And the table that you sent us had FY24, FY25, and FY26 for quarter one. The first column was budget, next column was actual, and then it was actual versus budget. I'm assuming, but I want to make sure I'm correct, the first column, budget, is what was the projected revenue. It didn't use the words projected revenue, but since that's what the question was, I think that's what WMATA was sending. Am I reading that?
I believe that is listed as, budget forecast. Yes, sir.
All right, got it, okay. So in FY24, we had a budget forecast, and then from terms of actual revenue received, it was 7% less, about $34 million less. FY25, as we're starting to see ridership really take off, people really returning back. I would argue return to work policies were part of a driver to that. There were many aspects to that. But now our actual versus budget is actually $106 million more in actual revenue compared to what we projected, a 22% increase. For FY26 quarter one, you reported a $21 million, this just in one quarter, $21 million more in revenue than what was projected in the budget, a 15% increase. So can you talk about, no one's going to predict perfectly. There's always external factors that impact these elements, but a 22% and then on pace right now, a 15% feels like a pretty significant increase in terms of actual revenue over what was projected. Can you talk about where and why are you seeing that big distinction?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. So obviously, and I appreciate you saying that, forecasting, especially post-pandemic, is very, very difficult. And there's so many variety of factors that add into that. So one is ridership, and ridership is another is fare compliance. And as we were able to get more fare compliance added to the ridership, then that helps. Another type is the type of ridership. So someone traveling a medium to long distance trip pays significantly more than someone with a short trip. Someone that travels on a Monday pays more than on a weekend or late at night. So there's a blend there of all of that type of thing. I will say that Q2 probably is not hitting 15%. And this is where these anomalies kick in. So during Q2, we had a federal government shutdown. We probably, I think, $8 million, I think our last estimate internally was about $8 million revenue loss. And that's money there's no chance of making up, obviously. Today is a partial government shutdown. Last week, we probably lost $4 to $5 million in fare revenue, give or take. And secondarily, our expenses are up. And so when we hit $106 million, we also had some other cost efficiencies. We were able to come under budget by $120 million last year. We used $28 million of that, I believe it was $28 million, to roll into this year's budget to balance. And then the rest of it, we put back into the capital program to basically reduce subsidy by jurisdictions and to remodernize the system faster. So right now, our challenge is one, vacancies, and every operator vacant. So we can either drop the trip on a bus operator or fill it with overtime. We can either have overtime for police or less police coverage. Those are our two biggest drivers of overtime. And we've decided that we want to deliver those trips as long as the revenue. But while revenue looks really, decently good, we are also higher on the expense side. And so trying to balance both of those things to make sure that we stay under budget in totality. So we'd like to see this trend continue. We estimate less growth next year because at a certain point, we've led the country for 2.5 years in ridership growth. There has to be some point where these double digits
Everybody
don't
else starts to
continue.
catch up.
January, we had a very busy week, the week before the storm. So 2 weeks ago, we had multiple days at 900,000 day after day, which in January, we were very excited. Last week decimated our ridership. This week is going to be a very slow, I bet you all of February is going to be lower then. And then we hope for a very busy March. Then there's these other things that we don't know. So now with this IndyCar race, sounds like it could be tons of ridership. It's also going to have very serious impacts on our budget. And I would think multiple weeks of bus detours for setting up of a race like that. At the same time, America 250th, we could have a lot of people. And then we got security aspects. The NFL draft next year could be one of the biggest tourist events in the history of the district. At the same time, it's going to shut down major parts and have serious bus implications for a couple of weeks. So all those are puts and takes, and we're trying to figure out the way to balance the budget and capture every revenue dollar we can. I will tell you, if we could get bus fare compliance anywhere like it was pre-pandemic, I would think right now DC would have zero subsidy growth at all this year. Might actually be negative 1 or 1.5%. So as we continue to get people that can afford to pay, back to the questions you and a couple of the other council members asked, then we can deliver actually even better service for people. So that's this push and pull that we're trying to work on.
Yeah. Well, to the projected versus actual, just like with our district budget and our CFO, I do not expect that the projection a year out is going to hit it 100%. There's always going to be a little delta plus or minus, right? And you always want it to be plus, but it'll occasionally be minus. I feel like we've been having the conversations about what does a post-pandemic transit system look like, and I would argue we've got the best in the country, and obviously others agree. And so we know we're seeing ridership grow. We know we're seeing all these positive trend lines. It surprises me that we will always have some amount, again, of that delta, that plus or minus. These feel like bigger numbers than I would expect in terms of what we actually hit in terms of actual versus budgeted. And we're not going to solve that sitting here, but I would like to continue working with you and others to think about how do we keep fine-tuning that. And the reason why I think it's important is when I'm going to my colleagues and promoting DMV moves, when I'm going and promoting the resources we absolutely need to and should be putting into WMATA, when my colleagues or the public sees actual revenue way off from what was projected, it does become harder to advocate for, we've got to put more money in. And that's going to segue so I can give you a chance to talk about why operating is different than capital.
Sure.
And so I think we've got to think about, from an oversight perspective, how we're making sure that the amount of money the district is putting in, which is not insubstantial, is what is actually necessary to run the great system that we deliver and that we want. Let me give you a chance to, as we kind of wrap up this portion and then move to public witnesses next, explain the difference for folks between operating and capital, because we still have huge capital spending financial pressures coming. But if they look at this and they say, well, wait a minute, you guys are overperforming 15 to 22%. Why on earth do I need to be putting more money into a metro system when you're hitting above? So that's why that through line is an important part to put on the record and make sure people understand.
Yeah, great comment and question, Councilmember, and appreciate you wanting to help educate and explain that. I will say on the forecasting, so at our February board meetings, at the end of February, we will have our final we'll have a mid-year FY26 and our final what we think will be our final FY27 budget forecast. So really importantly, we do multiple reforecasts throughout the year as the data becomes more granular. So again, really leaning on transparency to say where the puts and takes are on that. And so we'll make sure you can see all that at the end of this month. I think it's really important if someone says, oh, it looks like revenue is really up. Again, operating budget, the expenses are also up. And so there's how to net out driving that. And that is, again, back to we could drop trips or have other things not perform at a high level in the operating budget or spend to the budget. We in the DMV moves process, we originally thought we were going to need almost $100 million, I think it was, a little bit over 100, on the operating side as well, which for people to understand, that would be not only one time, it goes into the year and then compound grows from there, which then therefore the district's bill would continue to rise at a higher rate. Through all of the efficiencies in the last couple of years, we've identified almost $500 million of savings. That has actually reduced to be zero net growth on the outside the legislation for the district's budget. So the district actually would come under 3% this year, which is very valuable. The capital side, so again, that funds things like bus operators, train operators, regular service that you get, police, things of that nature. On the capital side, that's things like how to get rid of the 3,000 series trains and have new 8,000 series trains. How to have buses that are 6.5, 7 years old versus 9-year-old average. And therefore they last longer out on the street. They don't break down. The air conditioning works in the summer, things of that nature. Cooling in the stations, elevators and escalators that perform at a very high rate. New station entrances, as an example, bus lanes, technology projects, all of the things that would be more what we would describe as capital. That is where our big problem is, and as you know very well, in DMV moves. So the funding that came together in 2018 into 2019 was $500 million for Metro, because the system was, quite frankly, everyone knew it was falling apart. And that $500 million was the first time Metro really had a capital account that could go bond and drive big capital investments. So a good example is we rebuilt the Yellow Line Tunnel, which literally had water in the tunnel. It led to that smoke emergency where unfortunately someone died. Those are the kind of investments, rebuilding platforms, ordering new trains, things of that nature have been actively happening. It's why we have very high elevator escalator performance now, why mean distance between failures, so how often a vehicle breaks down, is way up. We're very, very high on that now. Why they're getting, quite frankly, better speed. You don't hear about smoke in stations and fires. All of those types of things are because of capital investment. Unfortunately, that money was never indexed. So for someone listening, be like Social Security that was passed and never got indexed. If you were 90 years old now, you'd be getting a check for $20 versus the appropriate amount because it's been indexed for the last 50 years. That money will still be coming in, but it will only be enough to service the debt. And it means by our FY29 budget, which is July 1st, 2028, we will effectively have a major reduction in our capital program by almost $800 million. And because we will not have the funding to issue new bonds to actually move projects forward. And so that could be basic things like we spend about $130 million a year on track renewal to keep the track safe and in a good condition so we don't have speed restrictions. It could be big things like Councilmember Fruman said about Western Bus Garage. All of those things need capital dollars. So what we're hoping with DMV moves, we started at about $800 million through a lot of rigorous analysis, working with yourself, all the chief administrative officers, CFO, all those types of people for the last year and a half. We got down to what the smallest amount of number we believe will allow us to keep our asset management program going, i.e. we don't want assets to get worse condition so they can perform high, and B, get a revolving bond program equivalent to what DC has. So in DC government, just like Fairfax or Montgomery County or these other places or the states, they have the ability to issue debt and revolve it over time. We do not have that, and we're one of the only places that doesn't have that, and that's what causes us to have these peaks and valleys. If DMV moves funding comes together, it will re-baseline what happened in 2018. We've gone through probably definitely the biggest rate of inflation most any of us have ever seen. So unless you were here in the mid-70s, it's the highest amount of inflation we've ever seen. So a good example, we have power equipment that in 4 years has gone up 60%. We don't have a choice whether to buy it or not. It's not like remodeling a kitchen. Either we upgrade our powering equipment or the trains don't run. And the problem is everyone in the world is trying to build data centers and power equipment at the same time. That's just the reality. Our rail vehicles, a brand new rail vehicle bought today would be a better part of $3 million. That's what these things cost. They're very expensive, but it has to last for 40 years. And so what we need is that rebaselining, index to 3% growth, which the larger region agreed on. And that will now have us that revolving bond program. We do not have to make any cuts starting this year. And if anything, we can build a long-term capital program versus a 6 to 10. We can have a 25, 30. We can do new projects that Councilmember Fruman mentioned. We can get to a more automated rail, which means much higher frequency, much safer, lower cost. We can then start exploring where we need other transit services in this region. We carry a lot more people and make life more affordable for a lot more people in this region. So, sorry, I know long answer. I know you know it well, but it is to say it's transformation would be an understatement. That word's thrown around a lot. Arguably, since the foundation of Metro, this is the most important thing we've ever done for Metro, because that way Metro could be there for everybody long term.
Yeah. I don't mind a long answer on that one.
Okay, thank you.
That was absolutely, I wanted to tee that one up so that you could end on that.
Okay.
I think that is an important charge. I was really glad to hear several of my colleagues that came in today get a chance to kind of hear about why that's important, what those steps are. And I think that is crucial for them. Obviously, they all, just like me, just like everybody, wants to see a great running Metro system. But we also have a responsibility to think about what the future looks like. And that's an important part. And so that's why I want to make sure you had a chance to end on that. But I also think the reason why I brought up the budgeting and the projection versus actual, my reality is I have to be able to not just convince my colleagues, hey, wouldn't this sound great? But I do believe that the better we can do in helping narrow that so that that percentage is not a 22% increase, but we really show people how the projection is hitting the actual closer to what, and if I had my CFO come in and give me we were off by 22%, we'd be livid, right? And so I think that is the challenge. And that's why I want to highlight that as a point, because my colleagues will look at that. And as we advocate for the things that we both want, we got to make sure we're narrowing that.
Yeah, the only thing I kind of mention that is a distinct part of revenue. So from a spreadsheet revenue, that is like our generated revenue. So i.e. fares and ancillary, that's not investment from the jurisdictions. So if you had the CFO in DC come in, I think you would be looking at revenue way more holistically, variety of all the taxes and fees. This is a quarter of that side of the ledger. So I think it's not the equivalent, but I understand your point. I think when you see Q2 for this year and then forecasting going forward, that continues to narrow down because now we have a model baseline differently. And it's pretty clear where the level of growth we're going to continue to get versus 2 or 3 big swings over the last couple of years.
Great. I appreciate it. Mr. Clark, Mr. Jones, thank you very much to the WMATA team. I appreciate it. We're going to turn to our public witnesses now.
Thank you.
We may have some follow-ups and we'll make sure we follow up with you and your team afterwards.
Great. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. All right, we do have some public witnesses, and again, I appreciate their patience as we had the general manager testify first. But let me call out the names of the folks that we have signed up to testify. I've got ANC Commissioner Joe Bishop Henchman from ANC 5F, who I believe is going to be submitting written testimony. ANC Commissioner Ashley Ruff from 7F. ANC Commissioner Trupti Patel from 2A03, the chair of 2A. Taylor Terry, public witness. Laura Miller Brooks, who's the Director of Transportation and Infrastructure for the Federal City Council. Nicholas Deladon, public witness. Heidi Case, co-founder of the DMV Disability and Senior Community. And Ben Lynn, the Press and Communications Associate with ATU Local 689. So we're going to move folks onto the panel on Zoom, and then we'll turn to folks in just one second. All right, Commissioner Patel, I think I've got you up first. Commissioner Bishop Hinchman is unable to join us, and Commissioner Ruff has not arrived yet. So Commissioner Patel, how about I turn to you? Good morning and good to see you again.
Good morning, Chairperson Allen. Thank you so much. I was not expecting to go this quickly, so bear with me as I pull up my testimony on the screen. All right. Good morning, Chairperson Allen. Thank you for holding this hearing and for allowing my comments to be entered into the record. My name is Trupti Patel, and I'm a fourth-term Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner representing Single-Member District 2A03, which encompasses much of the historic Foggy Bottom. And I currently serve as Chairperson of ANC 2A. In addition, I am the district's longest-serving elected official who is also an active tipped hospitality professional. The Washington Metro Transit Authority is and remains a critical lifeline for hospitality workers across the DMV. Many of us work non-traditional hours and rely on frequent, reliable service to get to and from work safely and affordably. I am encouraged by General Manager Randy Clark's continued commitment to the improved operational standards introduced last year, particularly the plan to reduce headways as little as possible, to as little as 1 to 3 minutes on key lines. The level of reliability allows riders to plan their day and nights with confidence and meaningfully improves the quality of life. I also want to commend WMATA for maintaining fare stability during an economically volatile period. For working residents, that decision matters. Turning to the better bus network redesign. ANC2A actively engaged in the planning process. Feedback from our residents has been mixed. Foggy Bottom's most heavily trafficked routes were replaced with new routes that connect to neighborhoods such as Brookland and Edgewood in Northeast DC. WMATA's data collected in November 2022 identified a need to expand access to frequent, high reliability service and to better connect riders to essential destinations such as grocery stores, schools, banks, hospitals, and employment centers, while also supporting post-pandemic ridership recovery. The redesign reflects clear shifts in travel patterns between 2019 and 2022 and was explicitly crafted with equity in mind. Riders consistently raised concerns about unreliable service and a lack of true route connectivity. The new network addresses those concerns by expanding midday, evening, and weekend service, increasing access to routes that run every 20 minutes or better, and linking routes to key community anchors. ANC2A passed a resolution urging WMATA to extend the former D74 and D12, now the D10, to the Kennedy Center and to restore stops along 23rd Street. The changes save some riders up to 30 minutes of walking and materially improve accessibility for seniors, workers, and people with disabilities. WMATA has also coordinated with DDOT to address roadway conditions, stop spacing, parking zones, and vehicle circulation along New Hampshire Avenue. While I support the goals of transit equity and system efficiency, I must raise a serious quality of life issue on behalf of my residents. Multiple WMATA buses operating on the C85 and D10 routes have been stopping overnight between approximately midnight and 5 a.m. at New Hampshire Avenue Northwest and 24th Street Northwest. These buses idle for extended periods and appear to be using this residential stop as a staging or holding area. This has resulted in significant nighttime noise, sleep disruption, and health impacts for nearby residents. I personally raised this issue with WMATA leadership and with the members of this council. I respectfully ask this committee to seek a formal response and urge WMATA to implement immediate mitigation measures. Being a good transit provider also means being a good neighbor. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not address the deep concern residents have expressed about the heavy presence of the National Guard and Immigration Customs Enforcement agents at metro stations across the district. This level of enforcement does not make riders feel safer. Riders continue to observe fare evasions occurring in plain view, often without intervention, while law-abiding riders feel surveilled and uncomfortable. While I understand that some of these decisions are driven by federal pressure, pressure beyond the district's direct control. I urge the council to do everything within its authority to protect WMATA's funding, preserve local oversight, and prioritize rider safety in a way that is equitable, humane, and effective. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Let's see. I don't believe Taylor Terry is here. Okay. So let me turn to Laura Miller Brooks next. And then Mr. Del Don will go to you next, then Ms. Case, and then Ben Lynn.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I am testifying on behalf of Federal City Council, so I see the timer is at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, but
We can adjust that. Don't
I would
worry.
love my extra 2 minutes. But good morning, Chair Allen and members of the Transportation and Environment Committee. My name is Laura Miller Brooks, and I'm the Director of Transportation and Infrastructure for the Federal City Council. I want to begin by applauding your leadership, Councilmember Allen, and the DMV Moves effort by bringing DC, Virginia, and Maryland to the same table. We did force a definition of Metro Rail's 40-year capital needs. And as we move towards implementation, I think there's still questions that were unanswered, and some of the biggest, hardest challenges that DMV Moves identified remain unresolved. To deliver the best transit service to district residents, DC must build the institutional capacity to responsibly and transparently manage the substantial local investment in WMATA, not just fund it. For the District of Columbia, Metro is not a luxury. It's the backbone of our economy and the circulatory system for our entire workforce. The recent Snowcrete storm underscored this. WMATA is a critical asset for regional resiliency, especially when roadways are unsafe or lack sufficient capacity. The Federal City Council recognizes and appreciates the thousands of WMATA employees who maintain service under these unprecedented conditions. Thank you. In FY26, WMATA achieved significant milestones. Metro Rail customer satisfaction is at some of the highest levels seen in years. WMATA's safety investments and increased enforcement have led to the fewest safety incidents for customers in nearly a decade. And WMATA has implemented modernized fare payment systems and new technologies for real-time information and wayfinding, improving service and reliability for rail and bus customers. These wins prove that with resources, WMATA can deliver high-quality service, especially for rail customers. So as DC looks to implement the DMV Moves recommendations alongside our regional partners, DC's goals should be to provide dedicated capacity within DC government to ensure that WMATA's performance is fiscally sustainable and serves the needs of district residents for generations to come. The district's financial commitment to WMATA has reached a critical turning point. In FY26, DC's contribution of general fund revenues represented to WMATA of $971 million, represented 9.04% of our total general fund revenues. And our capital budget dedicated to WMATA in 26 represented 14% of DC's total annual capital budget. As we look to dedicate more resources with the DMV Moves effort, it is critical that DC focus on how the current resources are best serving riders. Despite the record level of an annual investment in WMATA, service benefits for the district's residents who rely on bus service has been underwhelming. WMATA's Better Bus Network redesign engaged and promoted to the public a visionary network, but the rollout of the revenue-neutral bus network in 26 did little to expand reliability, improve frequency, or coverage. Many routes have less frequency and longer last-mile connections to bus stops than prior to the redesign. And while the visionary network costs only $200 million more annually, WMATA only plans to deliver 6% of that visionary network to DC and the region by 27, despite the 27 operating budget for WMATA being more than $100 million than the 26 operating budget. So as DC proceeds, we should actively manage our investment. The Federal City Council proposes dedicating 0.5% of DC's annual general fund revenues that are contributed to WMATA, or roughly $5 million annually, to provide the resources and capacity to allow DC to take responsibility to find solutions for WMATA's long-term sustainability and provide ongoing transparency around how well our investment in WMATA serves residents. We recommend establishing, similar to the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, an entity either within DC government or adjacent to it with 5 or more full-time staff experts and resources for independent analysis as well as coordination. We also recommend using those funds to pay WMATA Board of Directors members for their service and using, again, those funds to provide support. Finally, we appreciate the opportunity to work with this committee and see DC build its institutional capacity to ensure our city and region have a transit system that is as fiscally responsible as it is operationally excellent for the next 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let me turn to Mr. Deladon. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Charles Allen. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nick Deladon, and I represent the DuPont East Civic Action Association and its citywide DC Safe Streets Coalition. While DC is in the throes of making DC more bike-friendly and car driving more frustrating, the need for reliable public transit is a vital concern. But WMATA seems oblivious to the impact on people who rely on public transit. Under the Better Bus Network, residents complain about bus service. In Ward 3, residents complain that D94 buses are extremely late, commute times are longer, there is no direct access to Metro Station, that would be 10 circle, I believe, and distances between stops are longer. In Brookland, WMATA's redesign eliminated the H6 bus, replaced by a new C63 route. The new route omits 6 blocks of interior Brookland along Quincy and 14th Street, previously served by the H6. The new C63 route eliminates proximate service at long-standing Brookland institutions and landmarks, including Brookland Middle School, St. Francis Hall, the Franciscan Monastery, Ronald McDonald House Charities, and Fort Bunker Hill National Park. In Anacostia, residents rely on the new D1X line, formerly the 36, and the D10 line, formerly the 32, but these lines are unreliable. They are infrequent, not on time, or do not show up. Another issue is the location of the bus stops. The Better Bus Network moved bus stops further apart without consideration patrons who may be seniors or handicapped. Bus service is most helpful when bus stops are at popular public donation destinations like hospitals and schools. Moving the bus stop made it difficult to get to the Washington Hospital Center. The stop for Howard University Hospital is on Florida Avenue, 15 minutes away by foot. The Columbia Road, WMATA, on Columbia Road, will want to move the bus stop away from the medical facility at Biltmore Street. These are common destinations frequented by people with medical problems. Putting bus stops further apart to accommodate an algorithm that may serve bus riders 30 seconds travel time is the wrong focus. While it is possible for WMATA to move the bus stops back, it would be better not to make a mistake to begin with. Some attention must be paid to the distance between the sidewalk and the place where we access a bus or car. Pedestrians, seniors, and the disabled suffer here. When bus lanes hug the curb, when bike lanes hug the curb, they deprive us of access to the curb, which is essential. The loss of parking is not only to private cars, but any kind of vehicle, whether taxi, Uber, or Metro Access. We recommend WMATA and DDOT invested faster, more frequent transit, particularly in Anacostia, adding bus service and extending metro lines closer to where people live. We recommend that they enhance transit safety, and we recommend that they protect parking availability for essential travel to grocery stores, senior living facilities, and small businesses that rely on vehicle access. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, was that it, Mr. Deladon? I couldn't tell if you were finishing there.
I'm done.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Next, let me turn to Heidi Case. Okay, I'm sorry. I think Ms. Case is not there. So Ben Lynn, if you're there, let me turn to you now.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on behalf of ATU Local 689. A couple of issues we want to briefly bring up and discuss. One key issue being automation. We at the union are ready to partner with authorities and lawmakers and WMATA to ensure that our region has the best transit system in the U.S. It is a little disappointing that we continue to see information about the possible automation plans without any concrete steps being taken now to really work with workers and address workers' concerns about the future of the transit automation. As we said before, we have some serious safety concerns about completely driverless trains. We're not completely opposed and staying in the way, but we are looking forward to starting the process now about these conversations about automation. Also want to address concerns we have from our writers and members about the increased sustained presence of the National Guard and other federal law enforcement, including Border Patrol and ICE. We have concerns that our writers, especially immigrant, Black, and Brown communities, are being targeted. And we understand that WMATA does have to comply with federal law, but we are concerned, and we don't need it necessarily where they have to voluntarily comply in advance. In terms of funding issues, we are, we were part of the DMV moves, and we were, happy to be part of that process and have our voice heard. We were a little concerned that coming out of the process, there didn't seem to be a concrete plan in place to ensure the full-time, the operational funding shortfall faces WMATA. And we would also like to see anything additional funding put in place on the capital or operation side to WMATA to ensure that there is a plan or process to make sure workers are taken care of as the automation process moves forward. The last thing I'll briefly mention, my last 20 seconds here, understand that traditionally the paratransit service Metro Access has been contracted out over the past 3-4 years. We have seen a number of issues with some of the contractors and workers being mistreated and passengers having issues as well. So we would like to see WMATA move forward to bring the service in-house. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you all very much for your testimony. Mr. Lynn, I might just start with you and jump right in. I wanted to also ask you if you could talk a bit about your members and how the snow and ice has impacted. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge for everybody, and we heard the general manager talk about some of the steps they took to everything from having some folks be able to use hotel stays to help make the ability to be on the job a little bit easier. Could you share perhaps what are some of the coordination elements that you thought went well? And is there any constructive feedback around coordination that could have been better for the workers, the men and women that are helping keep our region moving?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So I'll answer the question in two ways. So in terms of what went well, I think again, our workers being the essential workers, happy to work with management. We're transit professionals who, similar to the post office, get up in bad weather to help move the buses and move people. So absolutely, there was some issues, but people found a way to get through. Some of the challenges we did see in some communities, we have workers coming from all over the DMV area. In some areas, Fairfax County or parts of PG County where the roads were a little less clean. It was a little bit more dangerous. We did have, some concerns expressed from workers getting to the WMATA facilities. But I know there were several times where our union representatives were able to work with WMATA officials in some situations where there wasn't any more buses, there weren't any more buses going out. And instead of having the workers sit and wait all day, able to work in a situation where they can be sent home. So we are grateful that WMATA was willing to accommodate us and work with us to keep everybody safe on the roads.
Okay, that's good to hear. I assume, but I shouldn't assume it, but I assume that there will be a kind of labor management kind of after action report to kind of talk through, again, what parts of that coordination worked well from each of the stakeholders' perspectives, what could have been better. Is that an expectation of ATU that kind of conversation between labor and management would happen after, a major event like this? Ben, I'm sorry, I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. That's a great question, Chair. I don't have a direct answer for you right now, but I will bring that up with President Jackson and we'll circle back around with more information.
Okay. My hope is, major events, disruptive events like this, it's always a healthy thing to have a good after action report. So I assume that will happen, but please let me know if I can be helpful with that. And then last question for you, Mr. Lynn. We heard a bit about automation today. We didn't spend too much time on it today, but rightly you point out one of the risks is it displaces human labor and the workers that have built careers that automation, if technology is not done in a thoughtful way, a proactive way, a collaborative way, it can harm workers. And then there are elements where automation both has, I think, a opportunity to improve safety, but then if not done correctly, it may not be more safe. And so can you just share what is ATU's expectation about again, kind of labor and management discussions, the conversations, and then the actions around automation? It is something that is very likely coming. And so in what ways is ATU, can you help identify and define more about the expectations ATU has of working in that collaborative and proactive way, rather than just having to react to technology as it hits?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So over our long, 50-year relationship with WMATA, we have decades of contracts, negotiations under a belt, as well as arbitration agreements and working with the Joint Labor Safety Management Safety Committee, for example, and having these conversations to address issues. We do have contract language that guarantees the union the right to bargain over major technology introductions and changes. And so I guess our expectation would be that WMATA would continue to honor their contractual obligations. Mm-hmm. I think, one example of technology where the union is supportive of it and that balance between the technologies being helpful and then having that union element. Most of the time when trains are in ATO, the train will stop, open the doors, but the human operator in the cab still be responsible for sticking his head out the window, making sure that there's no one stuck in the door and closing the doors. There were incidents in the past where individuals were tragically caught in the door and dragged in the tunnel. And so that safety feature came out as something to prevent those accidents. So that's just one example of some of those safety features that the union would be hopeful and anticipating and looking forward to still be part of the day-to-day operations.
Got it. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Laura Miller-Brooks, thank you for your testimony. I had a couple of follow-ups with you as well on this. I wanted to see if you could kind of elaborate a bit more on this concept you're talking about of well, I may not describe what you said correctly, so I'll make sure you have a chance to say it in your own words, but it sounds like you're recommending a creation of some type of independent or attached, maybe adjunct kind of commission of some type. One part that resonates with me is around how do we help support board members? I think the district has two absolutely excellent board members on the WMATA board, but I also know those are two individuals that have full-time jobs. Being an effective WMATA board member takes an incredible amount of time and energy, and I think that those are positions that rightfully should be compensated just given the sheer amount of time. They don't necessarily come with staff support. They don't come with staff support. So in terms of having a board member be able to have the resource, so I kind of heard part of what you described as trying to help the board members themselves both respect the amount of time and energy to do the job right, what they need, but also having the staff support for that. Did I hear that part of what you were recommending correctly?
Absolutely. And I would say the yes and Councilmember Allen is to support you and your colleagues and decision makers, be it the mayor, agency leaders, the CFO, city administrators. So I think DMV moves demonstrated the power of collaboration, but I think, from the district's perspective relative to Virginia, who pays their board members, has, public officials sitting on the board, so they're paid through those salaries and they get a stipend. And then they have the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, which actually provides staff capacity resources and coordination support. I think for the district, we don't have that. We don't have a single person within DC government whose job it is to follow WMATA issues and facilitate this coordination. We do have one person within the city administrator's office who understands the budget of WMATA. But in a time where DDOT has had hiring freezes and reduced budgets, I think, the lack of institutional capacity and I would say the risk of a lack of continuity to see the implementation of these DMV moves recommendations implemented is a risk to the district. It is such a significant investment that both being able to have board members who we can retain and continue to attract talented board members, but then also within the district government actually have an entity or a set of individuals who are responsible for addressing maybe some of the outstanding questions around dedicated funding or operational needs, and also provide transparency around how well is our existing investment serving us, especially to the point about, DC residents. We make up 84% of Metro bus riders. And so I think there's a real need for the district to have more capacity to, at a minimum, even just understand how well our investment in WMATA is serving DC residents. And then ideally add some capacity and continuity for us to continue to chip away and roll up our sleeves with the region to solve some of these bigger problems around long-term sustainability.
Got it. Interesting. I would welcome having a follow-up conversation with you to kind of hear more about what that proposal looks like. I'm not familiar with anything similar in Maryland, but the Northern Virginia entity isn't exclusively Metro. It focuses on a lot of other transportation issues, but I'm willing to definitely kind of hear what that recommendation looks like. I think this is interesting, at least. And I think you were here for the hearing when I was talking about the budget, and as you pointed out, 9% of the district's operating budget is our WMATA subsidy, 14% of our capital. So these are not insignificant sums, right? And when I talk about the budget projections versus actual, and I don't expect them to be, to the penny correct, of course. There's always a plus or minus delta. But I do think it is difficult for many of the elected leaders and policymakers and appropriators when they see those numbers off by significant margins. And there may be a number of reasons why it's not lining up, but that is something that makes it hard. So I just think that, I don't know if you were here for that conversation and
Absolutely.
your reaction to
Yeah.
it.
And I think that, even speaks to why have we not been able to realize the visionary bus network, right? I think it requires a lot of continued, less accountability, more just even, I would say transparency is the word, to really understand, this is such an important investment for our residents, but I think being able to have DC defend why that investment works well, or be able to more effectively advocate to WMATA management why the use of certain resources might be far more beneficial than others, I think is a critical need. And so I think whether it's continuing to push for cost savings and operational efficiencies for Metro to clear up some of their budget so that there could be more resources allocated to bus service or other improvements. I think we saw some of that on the DMV moves process with their capital needs, but most of those capital needs are around, the maintenance and modernization of Metro Rail.
Yeah.
So kind of the same idea, but I think when it is everyone's job to keep our eye on the ball, there's a risk that it becomes no one's job, I think.
And then did also hear kind of in the front part of your testimony talking about the Better Bus Visionary Network and Federal City Council expressing frustration over that it has not delivered, for example, faster, more reliable bus service. Is that what I was hearing?
Yeah, I think the Visionary Network obviously promised, pretty significant frequency and a decent, at least maintenance of coverage of existing routes. And as you heard from Councilmember Felder, and I think many of the other testimonies provided here, there's I think the Federal City Council and even the business community has had some frustration around those changes. I would also say the focus on connecting bus customers with Metro Rail also, I think, is a bit of a challenge of this revenue neutral scenario, because so much of the demand for Metro Rail is around a monoculture or a lack of diversity of kind of uses. So I think the ability for DC residents to be served with all of the trips that are not commute or entertainment trips, a lot of those trips, are bus trips. And so I think that is where we've heard frustration. And I think some of the employers who rely on bus service to get residents, to shifts on time, I think have found it frustrating that, what was a single seat bus route, maybe even on circulator, is now, a bus to rail to bus trip. So again, I think the visionary bus network really could have mitigated a lot of these issues. So I think it's, the revenue neutral scenario where we've had to make some trade-offs that I think members of the public did, had less, time or capacity to really engage with what those trade-offs might be.
Got it. Can I expect?
But supportive of the network redesign generally,
Right.
and, of bus service generally, absolutely.
Okay. Can I expect the Federal City Council to, with the same vigor as discussion around oversight of WMATA, advocate for bus rapid transit and bus priority lanes in the city?
Absolutely. And I think, that's part of the trade-offs conversation. We've increased our contributions to WMATA substantially, right? And DDOT has had a hiring freeze and a reduced budget annually for the past 3 years. So I think, while WMATA has hired, I think, 480 non-represented full-time employees from FY22 to 25, in that same time period, DDOT has had less and less staff capacity and then actual financial resources to deliver the bus priority program. So I think whether that,
I don't disagree with that, 'cause I want to
yeah.
see DDOT be able to do more.
Exactly.
I will just put this plug in. I would love to see FC2 advocating at the DDOT hearings and others for more resources and more emphasis on our bus party, because I think to achieve the better bus vision, we're going to have to make sure that we can actually move our buses. And that's on our side of the responsibility equation. And so I very much welcome Federal City Council's really thoughtful approach of how do we help push WMATA to deliver better, to do better, to be good stewards of the very significant tax dollars we're putting in. But I also would love to make sure that we're having the same push on DDOT and decision makers in the city to build what we have to do to actually help achieve that.
Absolutely. And again, we fully support, bus rapid transit and bus priority infrastructure. So happy to be on the record and support having more capacity for DDOT and support for DDOT to deliver that in coordination with WMATA. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. To Commissioner Patel and Mr. Deladon, for both of you, WMATA's opened up their most recent budget proposal for public comment. Is encouraging the public to use that as a way to help provide feedback for their better bus network route changes or other specific investments. Is that something that either you already have or you plan to share similar testimony to what you shared today with WMATA?
Chairperson Allen, Chairperson Patel, I have planned on signing up to attend WMATA's public hearing, which I believe is going to be Wednesday night virtually. So I will pretty much be saying the exact same testimony. So they shouldn't be surprised.
Well, they're sitting in the room right now, so they won't be surprised, but I very much appreciate that. I'm glad you are. Mr. Deladon, same?
I wasn't aware of that. So how would I get the information or the link and the
My staff will make sure that we email it over to you so you can get connected with WMATA's budget process.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Commissioner Patel, I know you're not in the room here, but there are WMATA representatives here. They're taking vigorous notes as you were testifying. And I will make sure I'm asking them to respond back to you formally on the bus idling question that you had. And it sounded like the ANC had weighed in on that specifically with WMATA before as well.
Actually, we hadn't. I got an email from a constituent actually late last year. I actually forwarded it, the email to you directly, Chairperson Allen. You responded to me and you committed to assisting in getting an answer. A WMATA representative also acknowledged my email, but I had not heard a response. And, as I said, I am supportive of the better bus network redesign. But, I would be remiss if I didn't flag this major concern. And it's a lot of the residents that live along that particular corridor. They've expressed.
Again, I'm looking at two WMATA representatives right now that have taken great notes. And so I'm asking them to make sure that they follow up with you. They're nodding their heads yes. So we will make sure that that happens for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, excellent. And then Mr. Deladon, we'll make sure we get you the link for the WMATA the WMATA budget proposal so that you have opportunity to help share your testimony and recommendations with them as well.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, I don't think I have any further questions. Again, I want to thank the public witnesses for their time today as well as flexibility to share your testimony. So thank you all very much. All right, this is going to conclude the committee's performance oversight hearing on the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Again, thanks to all of our witnesses for their testimony. The record for today's hearing is going to close on February 16th, so you can submit any other written testimony through the council's hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. Until then, the next meeting of the committee is next Thursday, February 12th, when the committee will hold its performance oversight hearing on the Department of Motor Vehicles. There being no further business before the committee, the time is now 12:17 p.m. and this performance oversight hearing of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment is now adjourned. Thank you.